Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy, the only show that knows that Lois Lane will make a useless Herald of Galactus. I am Jared. I am here with Britt. What's up, Britt?
Wow. Hello, hello. And here you go with the shade already. Not even 5
Oh, if
seconds
you
in.
think this is shady, wait till you see one when we talk about the Eisners.
Wow.
So, by the way, we will be retitling Tom King's Wonder Woman as the multi-Eisner Award losing series. So that's how we're going to refer to this from now on. And Cameron, there will be spoilers at the end of the stream, so we'll give you a warning ahead of time. Barry says, me and my friends have just been talking about Superman and the Fantastic Four. It's really good. And what's up, NJ? And he says, we've been discussing the concept of Clark leaving Kara with the Fantastic Four rather than his parents or the Danvers, and man, it makes a lot of sense. That's a good idea for a crossover. Anyway, so we are going to be discussing, as the title indicates, Superman and Wonder Woman and Reed Richards and Susan Storm. And there's actually a lot of similarities with these two couples, actually.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Well, in terms of first off, Britt, when you DM me and said you're gonna love the crossover that I wrote, and I'm like, okay, I'm interested. I adored it, so we'll talk about that later. But so Britt, your thoughts on Reed and Sue?
Okay, so first, of course, we love power couples because it represents equality, true equality. It's not one over the other, belittling themselves or having to choose something over another to and prop up this certain character to be equal. They are literally written as such, giving that 100%. And being Marvel's first family, you get that sense of what a superpowered family is supposed to be. And each character, grows into their own. Sue has her own independence. She has her own story arc, and she is the matriarch in a sense of Marvel, just as Wonder Woman is supposed to be the matriarch of DC. It feels more so like Marvel at the time, when uh, the Fantastic Four first, debuted. They honored that, the first family. Um, and like I said, each character getting their own arc and growing, and you see how a family dynamic of superheroes. It's not easy, but at the same time they can get through it. And it forces the writer and editorial to actually challenge themselves. And we also go into later the double standards, but also the advantages of having superpowered children and what that means for the family. It's not anything about eugenics or anything. It's just, okay, these people, they aren't regular mortals. They have powers. They are going to have a family. They are going to have children. And it's not something that is ostracized, or it's like they are going to automatically turn evil or something like that. They are just people on a totally different level than from regular mortals.
Yeah, exactly. So what we have here is so again so it's actually really interesting. The other thing, Britt, is that so last week when we talked about Captain Marvel, one of the things that I said is that they went with Carol by default. Sue was like the other female character that everyone was like, why don't you just give us this? And it's like, well, actually, it's because again, Marvel didn't have the film rights to even the Fantastic Four. That's the hilarious part about bankrupt Marvel. They sold the film rights to literally all of their top selling characters,
which has literally bit them in the ass. I mean, you have Spider-Man that's still tangled up in a lot with Sony. You think it was reported like a couple of days ago that they can't even use Miles Morales right now. Um, and yeah, Fantastic Four, they couldn't have anything with them. I think even the X-Men for a while
Yep.
too.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean Marvel, they they make a lot of mistakes. They are very flawed, kind of dumb, but somehow they still end up like being number one ahead of DC. And that is just like, I don't know if that's something miraculous or it's just like, dang, is DC that much behind or in the dumps? Because if Marvel is fumbling, I'm not sure why DC can't pick up the ball and, get anything right.
Yeah, exactly. So, what we got, obviously, we're going to start with talking about our favorite couple, Superman and Wonder Woman. And we've talked about this many times. And the thing about it, you can argue, like Reed and Sue, that the romantic like hinting has been with these characters since the DC universe became a universe and not just a series of books, as Britt and I argue all the time. So there's
Right,
that.
right. They and as I did the Twitter thread last Wednesday about the whole Trinity dynamic, but specifically for Clark and Diana. Diana wasn't a big presence at first. It took until the JLA, which is in that time of the 60s, for her to um, get some sort of importance. But even still, I think she was the secretary at some point, and then she
Mm.
was pretty much like the background of the JLA. It was pretty much still, and like it is now, a boys' club.
That is true. And by the way, Afro brings up a good point. There literally is a Superman Fantastic Four crossover, Britt.
I have seen that, but have yet to read it.
It's it's interesting. All the Marvel DC crossovers pretty much exist in a world where Marvel and DC are one, and it's kind of cool because Franklin's a fan of Superman, and at the end, Superman gives Franklin his cape as a little souvenir,
Aw,
and, and
that's
then
so
Su-
sweet.
and then Superman becomes the Herald of Galactus for part of the story. So he's essentially the Superman 1 million, where he's like glowing gold, but he has the powers of a god, kind of like Silver Surfer did in the movie.
Okay, I definitely have to read that at some point.
Although, do you mind reading John Byrne?
Wait a minute. Let me think.
Yeah, exactly. At least it's either Byrne or Jurgens. I have to remember who did this.
Uh,
Hang on.
Dang, both two evils. Oh my lord.
Yeah, hang on. I'll grab it. I have the omnibus. Let me see. All right. Yes, I brought my books. So let me see here. Should be somewhere here. It is by. All right, here we go. It is by. Actually, no. This is Silver Surfer Superman. Yes, they did a Fantastic Four Superman and a Silver Surfer. Yes, it's Jurgens. So
Well, too bad, so sad. I'm not reading
now here's the
anything Jurgens.
advantage.
Hmm.
Lois does not show up in that book.
A that is a plus, but Jurgens, I have to refuse.
Of course, of course. And to be clear, you have a reason to refuse, so it's not like it's like out of nowhere. But anyway, so it's like so you have that. Then we have Reed and Sue, and in many ways, they are like the first couple of Marvel comics because here's the thing: what so Marvel Comics had existed for like since like the early 19 around the time that like DC existed, except it was called Timely Comics. And for the longest time, and I'll get into this a little later when we talk about the comic book origin, but what happened was they were at the time post World War II, they were writing a bunch of like useless comics like Melly the model, Helly of Hollywood, or something like that, and it wasn't really like selling well, and Stan Lee was like really pissed. So what happened was he wanted to create so he was going to quit comics, and his wife Joan told him, "Hey, before you quit, why don't you create characters, write a comic that you would want to read? Because let me put it this way: if they fire you, you're going to quit anyway. What difference does it make?" So at the same time, Archie Goodwin was playing golf with the head of DC. And then he got this idea. So he goes to Stan Lee and goes, DC has this book called Justice League. Uh, can you write us a team book? So Stan Lee created the Fantastic Four and did it as like a team of characters that are also a family, hence the first family. And the Fantastic Four ushered in what's called the Marvel Age of Comics.
Well, that's quite interesting, and it's so funny of the fact that even, I mean, it can be attested to from the DC documentary of how Marvel's like first um, ideas were inspired by DC, and from their beginning, it's kind of like fans gravitated to Marvel because it seemed like they did DC's idea better, from the start. And even if it isn't a copycat or something, it just seems like Marvel somehow can get the audience that DC cannot.
Well, the
So,
other thing is like the Fantastic Four. I mean, Marvel actually markets themselves as being more the world outside your window. Like if these superheroes existed nowadays, and at the time that just resonated with the audience more than just these like gods amongst men or something like that. Because I remember there was a debate about comic books in general, where you had like Julie Schwartz, who was the head of DC at the time, and then you had Stan Lee, and they were talking, and then Stan Lee says that like the comic book audience wants to be able to see like themselves in these characters, and wants to to see like part of the world in these comics, and then Schwartz is like, well, no, I. I don't think I think the audience just wants to read a story and then just put it away and stuff. And I go, yeah, but Marvel's outselling you.
and honestly, that has been since Marvel was discovered, and it's really sad that DC would rather, continue on with the same way, of certain things because they have a rich history, and a lot of times they want to boast about the, oh, we've been, around for almost 100 years. But why does it feel like if you've been around for almost 100 years, why does it feel like you only have such little storytelling? Why isn't that DC started the multiverse? Why aren't they utilizing it as it should be? Why are these you have only a handful of Wonder Woman stories that, you know, some people can know. Um, but honestly, that's what it is. It's just a handful of stories out of all of these decades, you know, that are memorable. That
Yeah,
that says a lot of how DC has mishandled their characters.
yeah, no, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But so we have these similarities between both couples that obviously they're both like empowered individuals, and it's like and it's like with Superman, Wonder Woman, it's more of like gods, but with Reed and Sue, it's more of like the family story. And in many ways, Wonder Woman does deal with like the family drama stuff, like Reed and Sue do, and kind of Superman does with like Kara and stuff. So that's a little bit of a similarity, but yeah, there are a few points of where there's similar, Brit, but not like as much as like our past couples, if you will.
Right. I mean, these, you do have, also that similarity of Reed and Clark, that they are basically men of science. And Diana and Sue, they are the motherly figures, literally and metaphorically. And they are the ones that I don't like the whole grounding thing because of the traumatizing of,
Mhm.
that, but they do, they are the moral compass or the voice of reason for not just Clark and Reed, but also just the entirety of whether it is uh, for the whole group or, or for Marvel and DC as who they are supposed to be as the matriarchs. So that does give a little bit more depth of their similarities. They are again why we love these couples is because they exemplify equality.
Yeah, exactly. So then we get to the word that I always use when discussing portraying Wonder Woman, Brit. It's the B word, balance. Because that's what you need to write these characters well. And that's the thing. This is why when people say that like Superman or Wonder Woman are hard to write for, I don't accept that as a statement because they're really not if you read enough and not just base it off of your favorite run and try and force it in there. Jergens. So it's like it essentially what you want to do is because these too many writers want to have Superman like only Kryptonian or only like human gun. And same thing with Diana. But it's like if you properly do like the balancing act, like we have here, it's not that hard to do.
It's really not. I mean, every part of them, and if it wasn't important, it wouldn't exist. So every part of these characters are important and it is something worth exploring. You don't you weren't supposed to choose one over the other, demonize one part over the other. That is the one thing that New 52 got right with Superman is
Yeah,
that they tried to balance his heritage and his identities to where
exactly,
he understood that both sets of parents were very valuable to him and he honored both of them. The fact
exactly.
that the fact that we regressed and went back to, oh, he's just Clark Kent and resents who he is, and then Gunn has this movie that further, you know, alienates and demonize, the L's. It That's just too much. And for him to say, "Oh, it was in a comic," what comic were you reading? Which was Burn, and
It's
the fact that
hilarious,
we
Brett, because people point to Burn and Robert said that's BS, and then when he basically said, "Well, it's also present in Birthright," literally the number one comment was, "What bootleg version of Birthright were you reading?"
exactly. I
I
mean,
think honestly, what it is, and Robert kind of agreed with me on this one. I don't think that Gunn has read as much Superman as he claims he has.
oh no, he hasn't because first of all, Gunn did not want to write or direct or whatever a Superman movie in the first place. He said that he would rather do a crypto movie. And obviously we have crypto in the movie and also having his rescue dog be the inspiration for the film. So yeah, his entire thinking process for Superman was the dog. So that tells you something. Then the fact that it also tells a lot about Tom King because he is supposed to be this so-called DC encyclopedia and he is supposed to have so much knowledge of these characters, but yet he didn't and be the consultant, the comic consultant, but he didn't stop Gunn and was like, wait a minute, this not right for the L's or whatever. He didn't go back and read anything, uh, didn't correct Gunn. So that says a lot also about Tom King, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, exactly. And by the way, Afro says, I thought I was the only one who loved New 52 Superman. Okay, Afro, you will find that this channel is very pro New 52 in anything. So you're among friends, my friend. And by the way, NJ, There's a reason why the certain writer that called her a walking contradiction lost every Eisner that he was nominated for this year. Isn't that great?
Funny.
More on that later, because trust me, we're gonna laugh about that. I cannot wait for that. So now the cool thing about this, Britt, is that Sue started off as kind of the sidekick. Because here's the thing: the early Fantastic Four movies are issues are great. They're very of their time. It's like obviously at the time it wasn't seen as like as I don't want to say degrading her, but it wasn't seen as like an issue, and they're fine as artifacts of their time period. I like that like it evolved to the point where Sue is like arguably, and this is the thing she has on Lois. Whenever they try and call Lois the co-lead of the Superman book, I go, no, she's not. You could argue that Sue is the co-lead of Fantastic Four.
Exactly. And yeah, these books are these, characters were of their time. And I mean, in the 60s, or was it the 70s, you did have TV shows where they were having the women as the housewives, and even Bewitched or Genie, they might have been the protagonists, the main protagonists of their shows, but at the same time, they were still depicted as serving the men, or being as Bewitched was. She was still a housewife, um, but with Lois, and especially with Rebirth, she was very much a glorified housewife. You're baking pies, you are living on the farm, you can't work. She's at some point, I believe Tomasi wanted her to have the last name Kent instead of, how she always is written to still maintain the last name of Lane. But, just that whole thing, and then having the flags and the American flag everywhere. So they definitely wanted that whole American, family facade going on. And that is the status quo that they want to keep, because it resonates more with them, and even with SDCC, the announcement that they made for Superman, you don't hear anything about Lois. That is so funny to me, that if she was the co-lead and being in the movie, why didn't she get like a mini series or anything like that?
Because no one would watch it. That's why. So I'm sorry, I have to say it because someone's gonna say it. So then we also get, so with Superman and Wonder Woman, the other thing that like really works for them is the idea of like isolation, because it's like with Wonder Woman, well, it's like first off, both. Actually, here's the chief similarity when you think about this. Is this, and it's like with the whole idea of balance, because here's the thing. This is something that Reed specifically struggles, because there are stories where like Reed throws himself into his work and he's kind of a workaholic in that, and he doesn't spend enough time as like a father or a husband, and it does weigh on him and stuff. In fact, there's a great comic by He Who Must Not Be Named, unfortunately, but it's great. So, Britt, have I explained what the Illuminati is?
Yes, you have.
Yeah, so there was an issue where all the guys just stand around and talk about the like the women in their lives, and Reed at first is talking about Sue, and he goes, "Oh man, no, Sue's awesome. We have a great relationship." And then Namor goes, "Yeah, don't be so sure, because it's pretty because if you look at like because and Namor says, look, here's the thing, so you went to space, you got powers, and then you essentially locked her up in the Baxter building for so long to study her and like all the powers and stuff. And you don't spend enough time with her as a husband. This coming from Namor is hilarious. But Namor is the Marvel Lois Lane in my estimation. Those of you that know me will know what I mean by that. But anyway, it's like with he goes, eventually she will leave you. Because if you need to work on this, because this woman is in love with you. Case in point, I'm alone. Because Namor is always had a crush on Sue and tried to make moves on her. I brought this up in the Emma and Scott episode. One of the many reasons why I absolutely freaking hate this character with every fiber of my being. So that's part of it. But the very fact that Namor is giving Reed relationship advice, and then the issue ends with Reed going to Sue, and he goes, "Okay, I need your help with something. We could either go for a picnic as a family in the park, or you and I can have a romantic dinner, or we could do both." And then Sue just smiles.
Aw, I even though it is by who shall not be named, I will honestly give him a read before Jenkins.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Parker, yes, I did say that DC's allergic to new, or in other words, good ideas. That's why. That is
So
why, my
true,
friend.
so
That
true.
that is why, because and Dio even said they're too afraid of taking risks. And so here's the thing, Britt. We have a thing that's kind of going on right now. That, oh, by the way, and NJ, Aquaman would totally body Namor. Yeah, I said it. Fight me. Anyway, DC is doing something right now that is showing that taking risk is a good idea and doing new things. It's absolutely amazing. If only there was a name for that. By the way, Cameron brings up Namor basically said, "Get your sugar honey iced tea together before." Can I just say, Britt, I love how that's now part of the Comics League
Right,
lexicon.
right.
Wow. Thank you, lady. That is great. But yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you, Parker. You are among friends, my friend. That will serve you well in my chats. Trust me. But my point bringing this up is that Reed struggles with balance, and Sue. See, this is to echo a point that you made earlier in this episode, Brett. This is an example of positive grounding. Because you could make the argument that Superman grounds Wonder Woman and vice versa. We just don't mean grounding the way that the comic book Twitter means it. Because with this,
Exactly.
Sue encourages Reed to take a break from the lab, and for lack of a better term, be human, be a father to your kid, and just enjoy life more instead of trying to predict every bad outcome. Superman grounds Wonder Woman because, as we saw in the at first in Justice League, and then in the Superman Wonder Woman book, how to be how to not be Wonder Woman 24/7, and she
I mean,
teaches him, and she grounds him to embrace the Kal-El and the Clark Kent and bring them together into the one being that they are.
the best movie or, comparison would be Roman Holiday for Clark and Diana. You have this sort of very serious reporter, and he becomes enarmed with the princess. The princess just wants to get away from all of the whole royalty stiffness and just have a day of freedom. And that's basically Clark and Diana's relationship, that she lets him be as free as he wants to be, to let loose and not take a job as a reporter too seriously, or not hide who you want to be. And then he in turn gives her that, basically that ticket to be free and be open to what she actually wants to do, which Diana, as I said on my other thread, when you peel the layers back of these characters, Clark is just a simple, you know, farm boy from Kansas that, yeah, he is an alien from another planet. Even if he was to be on, Krypton, he still has that intelligence. He still has that laid back attitude, you know, and he will still have that humbleness with him. Diana, she is adventurous, but she's a free spirit, but she is very loving, and she has humbled herself and also laid back as well. And she's just an island girl. You know, the powers don't make them. So that is what connects them, is that they are very simple beings, basically. So when we say about the whole grounding or being a moral compass or everything, it's not so much as how, as you said, Twitter has made it seem like that if they don't have a human love interest, then they'll go berserk and evil. No. What we're saying is they just give each other that time to breathe, you know?
Exactly. And by the way, Lord Zed woke up and says, I hope I didn't wake up too late. Is Lois Lane dead yet? No, she's not. But I'll tell you what, Zed, I made a very special. So Parker says the one character we forgot to mention was Steve Trevor. I don't like him either. And then Zed says, Steve is in the dirt where he belongs. My God, I love my audience. So
Yes.
I want to say this. I made a very special clip today because I was rewatching Ace Ventura, and I wanted to play this just for you guys. And Zed, you reminded me of this. So here you go.
How would you like me to make your life a living hell?
Well, I'm not really ready for a relationship, Lois, but thank you for asking.
As soon as I was rewatching the movie, and for the first time today since I started Comics League, and as soon as I heard Lois, I was like, thank you. I need that.
That is honestly hilarious. That is hilarious. And that fits perfectly with the show.
Make your life a living hell. I know the context could not have been better. I was like, oh, I so need this. Oh, and trust me, there's another clip that I made just for a later discussion. I haven't showed it to Britt yet, but trust me, this is going to be really fun. You think I'm betting now? Wait till we talk about the Eisners, because I will be in rare freaking form, ladies and gents. You have to put that in the shelter. Oh my gosh, yes, we do.
Wow.
Oh my
Y'all
gosh,
so
Britt.
petty.
Write that down. Write that down. We need that. We need that. Thank you, Cameron.
The pettiness
There has to
continues.
be a
We are
joking line where she goes, Clark, I can make your life a living hell. And then Superman goes, well, I'm not really interested in a relationship, but thanks for asking. You're not my type. And then he looks at Diana. Anyway, so what we get here is like, it's like, and then the general like similarly that these guys also share is the balancing having a regular, particularly in the new 52, obviously balancing having a relationship and like saving the world, because as we say, unlike Tom King, Britt, what do Superman and Wonder Woman always say about the world?
the world comes first.
Exactly. So it's like, and it's the same thing with like Reed and Sue. So so it's constantly, again, the theme of these two couples is balance, which I just realized that as we were recording this. I'm like, oh my gosh, balance works. But they're not all like 100% similar. Like some differences is like, for one thing, Reed and Sue got their powers through like cosmic radiation, going into space and getting bombarded by cosmic rays. Superman and Wonder Woman, obviously, well, technically Superman's more similar because technically he gets his powers from the rays of the sun and he's from space. Diana is like, particularly now that we have the clay origin back. Thank you, Mark Waid. It's she's like literally an Earth woman. That's the funny part about it, is that when people don't call her an Earth woman, I go, you realize she's literally made from the earth, right?
Exactly. In the literal, biblical sense, Diana is
Like, you could
an Earth
not
woman.
get more literal Earth woman than Diana.
Exactly.
Which is great. But it's like, and plus also, Reed and Sue have the advantages that they've always been together. And obviously Superman and Wonder Woman, through the BS-ery of DC Comics and certain creatives, Jerkins, Tom King, Sorry. But it's like there's been like a lot of petty BSery when it comes to these two couples. Anything to add,
Exactly.
Britt?
I would also say that the way Twitter talks about Clark and his powers, as I always say, they act like he got his powers from drinking a mutated cow's milk or something, radioactive cow milk.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean, that's pretty much how they act. So I guess that can be a similarity or a difference. It depends on who you ask on Twitter. Um, and yeah, the fact that these couples, you know, the perception, and the foundation is it can be similar, but at the same time, it's so vastly different because a lot of the couples that we also compare with Clark and Diana, they are traditional pairings. They are pairings that are within the same franchise. Clark and Diana are under the same umbrella of DC, but they are separate franchises. And that is what makes their coupling so unique and stands out a little bit more. And yeah, it does give or has a little bit more resistance because they aren't in the same franchise. But again, if you go in, with depth and investment, they can be DC's first family.
Yeah, exactly. And Cameron says, actually, makes you wonder. We could have had a writer that saw Fantastic Four and started the Super Wonder family long before. Well, if you read the Shelterverse, that's basically what Britt and I did. So then we have also because here's the difference. To echo what Britt said, the real difference, and this is something that's consistent with like a lot of the couples that Britt and I compare. Editorial supports the other couples, where with Super Wonder, it's like editorial. It's like here's the thing with the new 52, they were pissy that Super Wonder sold as well as it did because they didn't expect it to sell as well, and then it's like I get the feeling that what it really was a sense of, oh no, we can never put Clark and Lois together. Quick, put Tomasi on the book. He'll sabotage it. And it still didn't work.
That's exactly what it feels like. And I believe that it was reported that the expectations definitely exceeded what they thought. And I mean, even the Dio, he said it, in interviews, and I believe it was said in a documentary too that DC doesn't like expectations. They don't like that pressure. So Clark and Diana's relationship, it demands, you know, high expectations, investment, and creativity.
So
You
what you're
know,
saying, Britt, is that Super Wonder, to quote Tomasi, demands the spotlight?
exactly.
Yeah, I know.
And
I
he's
love being petty. And what's up, little Luffy? I too am glad that Steve is dead. I think he definitely works, but he does his best work from the grid. Steve in a coffin is the best relationship he's ever been in. My God, I love you
wow.
guys so much. Don't you just love how aggressively anti-Lois and Steve our audience is, Britt?
Just, I mean, the pettiness is beyond.
I mean, they watch us, and trust me,
That's true.
as petty as I try and be, you should see Brit when she wakes up in the morning and like she starts dropping in the group chat. She's like, F this, F this, F this. And I'm like, oh my God,
Well, I mean, it's
someone rolled
deserved.
over on a cactus.
I mean, it's deserved, especially with the BSery that we see. It's kind of like, I'm just gonna say this. The fact that so many of the Twitter fans or even on
Fans.
Reddit, quote unquote, yeah, um, they they are the reason why DC is in the rut that it's in. New 52 was not without its flaws and everything, but it was something that could have, been rearranged, been written better, as it went along. But because so many of the fans want to have like this whole revisionist history and want everything to remain the same, never change, and this whole get off my lawn type mentality, you go backpedal to supposedly the post-crisis era. Mind you, this is the era that made DC have to reboot in the first place. That actually was going to have DC bankrupt and be shut down by WB. And
Yeah.
now we're in this mess where Mark Waid is trying to do the whole history of DC, but it's all contradictory. And especially when you're trying to make this one iteration of the character supposedly, you know, every iteration, combine it all in one, that doesn't make sense. Again, DC created the multiverse. Why can't you just utilize that instead of having this one option of a character? That
Because
is
it's
what's
very
hurting
simple,
them.
Brett. Because they are afraid that if they put Superman and Wonder Woman in an ongoing thing parallel, that book will sell more, and then people will be like, "Why don't you just do this and drop the flea bag that is Lois Lane?"
I mean, you have or had a movie, release, and whether it was the months leading to the movie or maybe even after, the fact that the comic sales of Superman has not shown any like uprising or anything like that, and it's showing pretty much either stagnation or decline, it says a lot. I saw some comic, you know, uh, stores say that they did get some people into the comic stores, but it's kind of like that hype train, you know,
The
that
other thing is I want to see, because that could be just like isolated stories. In other words, um circumstantial evidence. So I want to see, like, we'll see when the ICV2 numbers come out, if that actually
exactly,
like helped. And by the way, Cameron, once you gain control of DC, please hire us, please. We'll fix DC real quick. And
exactly.
first thing we're gonna do is essentially say, so Tom King, I'm gonna pitch you a great idea. It's a story that you are perfect for. You ready? It's called Being Fired. Have you tried that? Subtitle: Unemployment. Trust me, I'm sure you can. I'll tell you what. Go to Dark Horse, or better yet, go back to Marvel. I'm sure they love having characters that have mental issues. Go ahead, do that. Go ruin their universe. Yes, I would be trust me. It is hilarious how anti Tom King I became because of his Wonder Woman thing. Oh, and NJ says, do you think Steve will make a good companion with Hades? No, NJ, I think even Hades would be like, why am I stuck with this man? And just like he would be like, please take Lois back. I hate this woman.
Or if you are annoying to Hades, then yeah, you are hell on wheels
Where's my
all
candle
by yourself.
head?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So then we get with the context of the comic. It's like, here's the thing. The funny part about like pairing them together is like it shouldn't have been a risk, because here's the and again, I will never forget when I was talking to Comic Historian about this, RIP, is he said, he supported that, because it's like, look, ultimately, when you have a superhero with a non-super powered love interest, or in the case of like Batman, Catwoman, or Daredevil, Elektra, like what's the word? Non like hero, like, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It's essentially what that does is it severely limits your storytelling potential, because ultimately, and this is the part of my first Lois Lane, anti-Lois Lane video that pissed everyone off particularly. So it's the part that I hold in my heart the closest, is I said Superman, Lois Lane will always be nothing but the like damsel in distress. I'm sorry. If you guys are too like Lois fans in order to see past this, I don't know what to tell you, but look ultimately at the basic plot of any story. He is always saving her from threats and stuff that she puts herself into. And I go, I'm sorry. Ultimately, it just gets to this. If I have to see the same story over and over and over again, because I know DC doesn't have the balls to kill Lois, why do I care?
The thing is, it's so funny that again, the whole revisionist history of, oh, she can, get herself out of certain things. She puts herself in danger, yes, because she knows that Superman is going to save her. And it's the fact that when they say that she saves Superman, no, she really doesn't. I mean, it's very much a Mary Sue type thing, but the saving him is where Clark is reduced. His intelligence go way down. It's certain things that they make Lois into like this, basically Wonder Woman light as well, and even with giving her powers, temporarily, but don't do anything with them. You basically want her to be Diana.
Yeah.
And just the sugarcoating of, oh, she does this, she does that, but yeah, she might need a little help from Superman. No, she needs a lot of help from him, because who is going to catch her or whatever, whether she falls out of a helicopter, she falls off a building, or she gets shot at, she needs Superman for that. Honestly, she is very much a power fantasy, and a wish fulfillment, this female fantasy. And it, in a way, she's not that much inspiring as a reporter. Reporters do get themselves in a lot of trouble. And yeah, they are unethical, as Lois is. They are very nosy, and just go beyond boundaries. That's not something that should be praised, Sometimes,
Cameron, Lois is not even a good power fantasy. Yeah, exactly.
right, that's not something to be praised. That is very much conditioning, for accepting of, as I said, unethical dealings. And honestly, I just can't get with that. And as a female reader, as a female, I can say this, you know, Lois fans, they cannot um, project or think that they are speaking for all female fans, because I'm not one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Thank God you're not, otherwise that would make things really awkward. Anyway, yeah, the whole time she's actually the biggest Lois. I can't even say it. I was gonna say the whole time behind my back you're the biggest Lois simp, but even I can't say that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because that would definitely no.
Anyway, so the origin. Okay, so again, I'm going to restate this for people that came in. So there's actually two stories about the idea for the Fantastic Four. Both are true. So it's not like one happened and undermines the other. So DC had just started putting out the book Justice League of America. So the Justice League is established at this point. Stan Lee had been doing comics that his heart wasn't in it. And he was like, he was going to quit comics. And then his wife, Joan, told him, hey, before you quit, make a comic about like the way you would want to make it if you didn't have all these like creative restraints on him. Because it's like, essentially, Britt, it's like Marvel editorial at the time had told him, kids don't want character. They don't want like drama. They just want, a guy punch other guy in the face. Done. Obviously, they were wrong about that. So at the same time, Archie Goodwin, who was the editor-in-chief of Marvel at the time, essentially wanted... So what they did was... Okay. Oh, and by the way, fun fact, Black Panther first appeared in a copy of the Fantastic Four. So there's that. But anyway... So Archie Goodwin was playing golf with the head of DC, and the head of DC was like, hey, we got this Justice League book going, and it's doing really well. So what happened was, then Goodwin goes to Lee and says, "Hey, so you're writing this book. Can you make it a team book? Because Justice League is selling well for DC, and we need a team. Because the Avengers was not a thing yet. This was the first Marvel team. So Stan Lee created the Fantastic Four, and this ushered in the Marvel Age of Comics, and this was in 1961. From this and on, that's where you get like Iron Man, Thor, the Avengers, all that good stuff, including like Spider-Man, were created because this book set the foundation for the Marvel Universe, essentially.
Yeah. And I mean, that is why they are called the first family. And I mean, it's very poetic in a sense that, they've had 4 reboots and, well, 3 prior. But the 4th reboot of this to have a live action movie was the one that was successful. That says a lot, as the Fantastic Four, the 4th, iteration is successful. It is more, as of now, it has a slight leg up from Superman. So yeah, it is very much a poetic thing about Marvel and DC's rivalry and just the foundation that Fantastic Four has built over the decades.
Yeah, exactly. So the early team dynamics. So Reed and Sue were always a couple, and see the thing about it is Sue was also more of the it wasn't as bad with Wonder Woman, because Wonder Woman and the early Justice thing was the secretary of the team. It wasn't like that. Although Sue's role in dialogue was very 1960s housewife, which you can't blame Stan Lee, because that's the way society was back then. So again, it's like, that's why I'm like, I'm not like, oh my gosh, this sucks, because no, it was just a different time period. Luckily, she was given more things to do. In fact, I did not know, by the way, that at the time she could only turn invisible, and the force fields weren't like a thing like that. That's interesting. I did not know that. That's really cool. And then again, obviously they always build toward the wedding, which I believe that this panel is from the Marvels with Alex Ross and I forget who wrote the Marvels, but so that's essentially that. But do you agree with me, Britt, that it's not that like Stan was just writing the way things were back then, so it's not like when Lois wore blackface or something like that.
Right. It's very much of the 60s, but it's not as offensive. And also, it's so funny that DC and just the whole, like, um, well, Twitter community wants to boost up Chloe, and the fact that Arthur and Mira, I think Big Barda and Mr. Miracle, Reed and Sue, even Wally and Linda got married before them and had a um, much more, stable relationship than they have had, and how these couples actually earned being married and earned, being together, while Lois had to have, these changes over the decades to basically be suitable, and not be as toxic, not be, as, even though she's still unlikable, but not be as unlikable. Now she's just boring and unlikable. So, you know, 2 ways, whatever. But yeah,
Almost still boring.
it's just the fact that these other relationships that has a little bit more merit, they want to conveniently like ignore them. But yeah,
And
these
notice the long-lasting relationships. Most of them are between two people with powers.
exactly, that is something else that really stands out, that a lot of these married superpowered couples are superpowered. Um, I mean, that is the point of why at certain points they want Lois to have powers, or they give powers to Linda, um, or even Iris, at some point. But honestly, I think that Linda and Iris, they are so settled in their role. They're not, it's like DC or the writers don't try to make them more than what they are. But with Lois, they try to. So it's like it gets annoying, and they have to try to, as I said, make her as like a Diana light. But yeah, it is very telling that a lot of these couples are superpowered and have lasted long. So that is why in another section we will talk about the double standards of this, you know, idea.
Oh, trust me. And I have a special clip for that as well. So you also have the wedding of Reed and Sue, which was one of the biggest like events in Marvel, to the point where, so you know how like in Superman versus Muhammad Ali, they had like a key in the book that was like, hey, identify all these people. They had that in this, except it was for all the different Marvel characters, because literally practically everyone showed up to this wedding. And I don't quote me on this, but I think they were the first Marvel characters to actually wed, if I remember correctly.
I think so.
Let
You
me
have to look that up.
yeah, I got it.
Right.
First Marvel characters to get married. If I get this right, I am now reclaiming my title of Lord of Comics. I am now the Lord of Comics again. The first Marvel characters to get married were Reed Richards and Sue Storm. Ya boy nailed it.
I mean, that is it's very obvious, I would think so.
Yeah, but it's like there's so many characters in like 80 years of history. You would have thought it was just Spider-Man, but no. So, suck it,
Oh,
haters.
that another, even Spider-Man. I mean, even, yeah, MJ, but she was still very much independent, as being
Yeah.
like a model and everything. And she wasn't so much as shoehorned into, you know, Spider-Man's whole. He could honestly have different relationships, is what I'm saying. Is that,
As we
you
said in
know,
our episode.
yeah, Black Cat. I don't think it was. I forgot the character's name, but it was one more female character. Well, Gwen Stacy, but it's also another female character.
There was also like they hinted at Silver Sable maybe occasionally, but there were a few characters that Marvel, for lack of a better term, allows to get around. But here's the problem with that, Brit, with Spider-Man. The Marvel does it out of spite because they don't want Peter and MJ to ever be together. So it's like that's why I have less of a tolerance for that.
I mean, if you got to do that, then no, yeah, that's terrible. But if you can let these characters have different relationships, I don't mean thought around. I don't mean do that. But what I mean is basically, again, use the multiverse and have different iterations of these characters. With the different iterations, they have different paths and different stories. So that requires different relationships. That's how you do that. And yeah, if it is, I mean, these companies want to make money. What if you are having these different iterations basically competing, you are getting more money. So it's not a lose-lose situation. It's very much a win for them either way.
Yeah, exactly. So then we get to their son Franklin. Now there's an interesting fan theory about Franklin, Britt. You know what it is? All right. So you know how like no one in Marvel ever ages, right?
Well, that is the rule. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, because originally Sue's pregnancy was in real time. Like it took like however long a baby is in a woman's womb in order for
9 months.
Franklin to 9 months, yeah. But then but it seemed that everything's stopping in real time. So the fan theory is because Franklin's so powerful, he keeps everyone at a certain age so he can keep seeing his favorite superheroes.
That is very, I don't know how to, I mean, as a kid, probably he would do that and not understand the value of life and time, but that is something very unique.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like a confirmed fan theory or anything like that, but it's like it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. But yeah, so at this time period, they started to really explore more of like Reed and Sue's relationship. I didn't even know she left Sue at one point, but like they've kind of like played around with that, and it's like with Franklin, he is like the most powerful being in Marvel, really, when you think about it. And the movie kind of played off on this, but it is very like it's very interesting how the first married couple, is one of the first to have a kid. I'm always gonna keep like rubbing this in, Britt, because I have to. But so then you get something very interesting. So you get the John Byrne era, which again, now I want to be very clear. No one, as far as I know, no one in this run makes out with a 14-year-old girl. I feel like I had to say this because of John Byrne's obsession with that with Superman. So at this point, Byrne made Sue like more of a character, really, and it was even him that changed her code name to Invisible Woman. And this is part and parcel with a lot of what Byrne and particularly Claremont did, because Byrne was like the one of the original artists for X-Men, and that's like where like in the Claremont era where you got like Storm and Jean Grey and a lot of the strong female characters that would like define Marvel. And it's like Sue got like a lot of like Sue got like more of the power, more powerful. And it's kind of funny. They kind of hint at this in one of the original Fantastic Four movies, where Sue goes to Dr. Doom and she goes, I can create a force field in someone's stomach and expand it until they explode.
Oh my Lord.
And I'm like, oh yeah, she can. Oh my gosh. And it's always more with like, see, sometimes I feel like they turn Reed into kind of an emotionless robot, but I get why they do that. And luckily they have Sue to kind of pull him back from retreating too much into his work and stuff. And that's called proper grounding.
Well, I mean, this is why, I guess Byrne definitely bamboozled DC into thinking, the fact that he had respect in a way of Marvel's first family, that he would have that respect for Superman. But yeah, we now have a damaged Superman that has had long-term effect in the most terrible of ways.
Exactly. Then we get another child, Valeria Richards. Okay, so the way this works, Britt, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Valeria in the 616 Earth or timeline died in childbirth, but then she came, an alternate version of her came back. How does this work?
Okay, yeah, so I was very, very confused. I think that Sue was giving birth in some type of time stream or something, it was something radioactive, and I guess it caused a stillborn. So she died, and somehow some alternate version appeared. And it was weird because it says that this alternate version is actually the daughter or something of Dr. Doom. And Sue ends up somehow with Dr. Doom in that certain timeline. But then it says something about he's the one that saved her in order for her to be in the prime timeline and, go through the process of being born and everything like that. So then he becomes the uncle. So yeah, I'm still very much confused with that of how I guess they wanted to just in make a lot of drama for some reason and put Doctor Doom in. But yeah, her whole birth and everything sounds very much like Donna Troy's origin.
Time travel!
It's so rare when I can use that clip. I get the opportunity, I can't use that clip. So then you get the Wade run, which everyone always points to this and one other run, the Wade run, as like one of the definitive Fantastic Four runs, and it's one of the best. By the way, so there was a time, I forget whose it was. I think it was either Wade or Byrne, but Marvel was so, like, let's say experimental, but let's also say stupid, that they wanted to move the Fantastic Four out of the Baxter Building and move them into the suburbs to make them more relatable.
I mean, honestly, I guess influence with the movie, but it looks like a penthouse building or an apartment building or whatever like that. So, I mean, whether you are in some type of high-rise apartment or whatever, isn't what difference does it make? Or a condominium, what difference does it make of how that makes them relatable or not, where they're living, living. So it's
Well,
like
it's called Stupid Marvel. That's what it's called.
it's very much nitpicking, and this is why fans are nitpicky with the characters and what they do. I mean, it's really ridiculous.
Well, actually, Cameron has a very accurate term: experimentally stupid. Yes, that's actually a fantastic way to refer to it. And that's the point where you experiment stuff and it's like not good. Also, Valeria, because Franklin has like god powers, he made it so she was born in this time period and is totally fine. So it's like, okay,
Right.
so they've like cleaned up that really weird time thing.
Yeah, but it's still very weird. I mean, I tried to read it. I guess I should have went to the actual comic, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, story to understand it, because just reading like a summary of it just made it very confusing.
Yeah. Now, so then we get to what is known as one of the best runs, Jonathan Hickman's run. Now, I've talked about him before. So he is one of those really, really, really great writers at Marvel. And so the thing about Jonathan Hickman, he's one of those like writers that is built for DC. And what I mean by this, and this is the one smart thing Tom King has ever said, it's like the way Hickman writes like these characters are gods and like we're watching a conversation on Olympus. So that's the cool part of Hickman. But what he's also known for, and this sometimes was like hurt him, is that so Hickman writes these long stories with that build up with all of these different like pieces. And the thing about Hickman is that you'll be reading an issue and think, why did I read this? This is useless. Then, unlike Tom King, he pays it off much later. So when you get the full run and you read it from start to finish, it's like, oh my God. Like, the man is a genius at long form storytelling. People know that now. So they're like much more like, okay, let this guy do what he's doing. It's like even with like Ultimate Spider-Man. But like with this, you get the Council of Reeds, which are just versions of Reed from a different like timelines and such. And then you also get like the establishment of the Future Foundation. You also get, interestingly enough, the air quote death of Johnny Storm, because there was a storyline where he got caught in the negative zone and everyone thought he died, and his last wish was that Spider-Man would take his place on the Fantastic Four, and that's how Spider-Man ended up on the Fantastic Four.
Oh wow.
So it's really, 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 really good. And and the culmination of this run. So Hickman was writing this, and then immediately after this, he wrote Avengers. And so the Avengers is where you get the idea of like incursions, in other words, realities colliding and destroying each other. And he did this event, which he was building up to from his Fantastic Four run all the way through his Avengers run, called Secret Wars. And this was, a fun fact about this, I had the free comic book day issue of this because they were giving them away in my local library way before I was into comics. So that's how interesting, and that's how close that was. So in this run, all right. So as you know, Britt, I've referenced the original Ultimate Universe before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what happens with this is that the Ultimate Universe and the main universe are the only universes left in existence, and they go to war with each other. You literally have Iron Man versus Iron Man in this one thing, essentially in a battle to determine who lives. But at the same time, the realities are coming apart, so everyone else hops on arcs, essentially, and leaves those realities. But as they leave, all of a sudden, everything goes white. Then they wake up on this like patch world, like Earth, kind of like Convergence, only done well. And it's essentially called Battle World. And what you discover is, so there are these beings of infinite power called Beyonders. And I think it's kind of hinted at that they created the universe, but Doctor Doom got their powers and remade reality. So he is married to Sue. Franklin and Valeria are his kids, and like he rules over everything. It's like his police force is just a bunch of Thors, and it's called the Thor Corps. Mm-hmm. And he's so powerful that when Thanos shows up, he just rips his spine out like a freaking predator.
Wow.
And so, and this is roughly what the new the final Avengers movie is going to be. And like this, so what happens in this, you also had a bunch of cool tie-in issues, which are basically like what if issues, like what if the Marvel Civil War kept going? It's a great story. I definitely recommend you read that. I'll show you it later. But what happens with this is Reed shows up, and so Reed was on an all the heroes that were on the arcs are not affected by the quote-unquote reboot. So like a few of the X-Men, Captain Marvel, Iron Man, and Reed, as far as they know, this is not the way reality is supposed to be. So they show up and they go to war with Doom, but Reed is essentially like, Victor, what are you doing? And it's like Doom basically does the whole thing. It does the, if I remember correctly, so Doom basically plays the card of, you never respected me, Richards. Now I am a god. And then Reed goes, Victor, I've always respected you. And that just like shuts off Doom. And then the two Spider-Man, Peter and Miles, go to the Beyonder and said, hey, can you bring the world back to normal? And then they eventually persuade him to do that. And this is how Miles Morales ends up in the main Marvel universe. Arguably, that was a mistake. But the point is, that's how like a lot of those, like, and he was written in as in having always existed in the main Marvel universe. Arguably, this should have been a like complete and total reboot of Marvel, but Marvel has never done a reboot.
Really?
They've never. What they'll do is they do what's called the sliding time scale, where essentially it's like, instead of saying like this happened like 20 years ago, they'll say it happened a long time ago. Or like whenever they do the Punisher, they'll go, oh, he at first he was a Vietnam vet, now he's a Gulf War vet, now he's an Iraq War vet. So they keep like changing the time, or they give very non-specific measurements of time, as in if something happened in the past.
So that is what DC is trying to do, and it's so hilarious that it's not working out for them.
Well, yeah, because DC is known for reboots. That's the difference and stuff. But with Secret Wars, it's and what's kind of funny is like, so Reed shows up and he goes, "You stole my wife and kids," and then it's so it's essentially Reed fighting to get his kids back, and it's really cool. And I really like that. And then it eventually ends with like them traveling the universe, trying to repopulate it with the other Earths. Because remember, all the other Marvel Earths were like destroyed in Secret Wars, so they essentially have to reboot the multiverse.
Interesting.
And then Dan Slott comes on with the Fantastic Four, and the thing is, they kind of like this one is moderately controversial because one of the things that Slott did is he basically made it so because previous to this, it was always stated that like Franklin was a mutant, like an X-Men mutant. But in this, he's basically like, no, he's not a mutant. And everyone's like, wait, what? But this one also had some pretty fun stuff. Like I think this is the run where Ben Grimm finally married his girlfriend Alicia Masters, and the cool thing about that relationship is that Alicia is blind and she's never seen like what Ben actually looks like, but she still loves him.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, and they played off this in like the original movie, so I kind of dug that. But yeah, so Slots Run, I haven't necessarily read like that much of it like at all, but I've heard it's okay. I've heard it's okay. If there's any run that I would recommend anyone read anything that has Jonathan Hickman's name on it. You will most likely have like a very good time.
Well,
like
the way
well, yeah, go on. Sorry.
the way DC fans and Marvel fans are acting like Slot is just the like if he gets a hold of the character that you love, that's basically like a nail in a coffin or something.
Yeah, because it was hinted that he may be writing a John Kent book, and everyone's like, "Oh no!"
I mean, first of all, why is John getting yet another book when not Suicide Squad, Series 6 is basically like a fail. The last two John books have been a fail. So why is
Plus, here's a funny thing, Britt. The last writer that in people's minds really screwed him up was He Must Not Be Named, also a Marvel writer.
right? So he's not really a character that is salvageable at all.
Slott is also the guy that tried to give Spider-Man a sidekick named Spider-Boy and tried to make it where, oh, no, Spider-Boy has always existed in Spider-Man's reality. It's just, it was made so everyone forgot about him.
Well, that's stupid.
Oh, trust me, everyone hates it.
I mean, you're trying to gaslight the audience.
Yeah, exactly. It's really dumb. But so the double standards. It's like, so here's the thing. I say this every single time we compare writers. The stuff that they allow for Superman for other couples, but for Superman, Wonder Woman, it all of a sudden that's an issue. That is one of the most annoying things
very much
ever. So talk about the double standards, Britt.
Okay, so first it goes with the mantra or the name as a power couple. A lot of people have this idea that it means physical power, but when you actually go by definition of what a power couple is, a power couple means equals, being respectful to each other, working hard, being each other's support, that and just being successful as individuals, and you come together to make even more of something being a success. But again, a lot of the fans again take that as a physical form of, Clark and Diana think that they are, when they are together, think that they are gods or they are above, even though in issue 12 of Justice League, their very first in-depth conversation, They literally, or Diana, you know, is written to say they are not gods or they are not like Zeus, but they aren't mortal either, meaning they aren't, regular humans, obviously, because Clark is an alien, from a different planet. Diana is, while she is human, and very much an earth woman, her birth makes her a different, still a different entity and, of the divine.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
But those certain things, for some reason, these fans just can't see past, the power, physical power of them, and not look at, and that's basically why we have changed the narrative to look in context of the fact that DC has said they are outsiders, and that outsiders mean immigrants. Just the same way as when they say human, let's be honest, they really mean American when they say human, because for some reason, it's if you are of a different ethnicity or of a different culture, background or something that's non American, you are quick to be judged. And we saw that, in the Superman movie, and how um, Safran and Gunn was saying, this is Superman is this American symbol. Every other line that they were saying was very much American. And then you have the fact that he changed the motto saying truth, justice, and the human way, but in reality, he still meant the American way. And just to emphasize on, Superman is an American hero, so that means that he is very much human. Those certain things, when you say that so much and drill that in people's heads, that is their perception of these characters. And that is how they cultivate this limited idea that if you go outside of those limitations, of that certain way of thinking, then you're in the wrong. So yeah, it's just that certain xenophobic, borderline racist type thing that really makes fans have this like this intense judgment against Clark and Diana's relationship.
Exactly, exactly. So continuing on, then you have, yeah, but then wait a minute. So it's okay for them to have powers, be a power couple, and have a kid. Okay, so wait a minute. No one sees the cognitive dissonance here?
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
I finally got that clip. Oh, I've said this. I needed that clip, and I'm going to use it. Gunn even called him an American hero and prevents him from being globally popular. Well, yeah, and I'm like, that's the
Exactly.
problem with constantly marketing him as America. I mean, true, just the American way. Yeah, I'm like, you, just don't like say it that much. That's the thing. It's like, even when the motto was "Truth, Just the American Way," still is. They may have changed it, but they're going back to it. He didn't say it that much, so it's like that's all good. But it's like the problem is, it's like, and you see like Guns like, oh, it's just Superman's not as well known overseas, ignoring the fact that they've done studies on this, and the Superman logo is more recognizable than the Christian frickin' cross.
The thing is, Superman and Wonder Woman are supposed to be global heroes. Yes, they are American made in that sense, but they are very much global symbols. When you continue to drill the idea of they are just American heroes with American ideals and everything like that, and waving the American flag, you do limit them. So his excuse of, well, Superman isn't recognized globally, that's your fault because you market him as such, as just an American hero. So do you expect diverse fans um to relate or gravitate to this certain character? Batman is not that character where you can force him to wave the American flag. He's not, that is why Batman is very much is more of a global hero, or globally recognized than Superman. Superman Day or versus Batman Day. Batman has the signal and everything all around the world, but and you have so many people um dressing up as Batman, having these ideas. Batman and the Yakuza, things like that. While Superman has basically this um, pseudo, very cheap anime. You're trying to relate to that, but it's very much cheap anime. The
Yeah.
difference in quality and everything like that, it really shows the perception of these characters. So yeah, it's very much just the way that they limit them and have this certain standard for them. And as I said, you can't have Clark and Diana's, you know, to say that they are so human, and what you really mean is that they are so American. Diana, she comes from a multicultural island. Clark, he comes from a a different planet that really doesn't supposed to be defined as, you know, I would say it would be multicultural in a sense of the skin tone or so of the Kryptonians. Um, what was very interesting to me when it was said, um, I forgot his name, but he was the actor from Bridgerton, and he was supposed to play Superman's grandfather. And
Oh, yeah, I remember. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's the guy that tried out to play Seg L in Krypton, right?
right, but he was not chosen because he was black. And also is another controversy is of the Kents, of how they didn't want the Kents to be of any other ethnicity, and because, of adoption. But I mean, they aren't Cal's, biological parents.
By the way, Britt,
So
there's another part of that Krypton controversy. You're gonna love this. So Jeff, so there was this one scene. So the way I remember it is one of the actresses, who is black, by the way, was like, apparently her hairstyle changed in between scenes, and then Jeff Johns, who was a producer on the show, said you have to keep it consistent in this. And then so the woman says, but yeah, black women change their hair all like a lot, like all like throughout the day, or so, something like that. Somehow that was like roughly the same. Then Jeff says, he said basically it's said that, like, hey, black women don't wear their hair that way. And he said he could make this opinion because, like, he's married to a black woman. And I go, why would you say that? Yeah, I knew you would love that, lady.
Jared, I almost forgot we were recording.
If you want to drop stuff in the private chat, you can. But yeah, as soon as I heard that, and I go, that's where the allegations of Jeff Johns being a racist came from around the time with the Ray Fisher stuff, because it's like, oh God,
No,
why
no,
would you
sir.
say that
No, sir.
to a black woman, mind you?
That is definitely the number one thing. First, as a part of saying, I'm married to a black woman, so I can say this. No, you don't get that. No. And then second, to talk about black women and their hair, you are basically going into a war zone, So yeah, I mean, that just goes into this conversation of how basically the perception of society. You know, they don't. A lot of people don't take serious of different ethnicities, different races, or and especially black women, black people very much belittled. And the fact that, again, Superman is an alien from a different planet, and also he is like a plant that gets sunlight, and the fact that he
He's
gets
like a plant.
I mean, the fact that he gets his, his powers from the sun. And there was a meme, a funny joke that Superman is supposed to have like a fair tone or, a darker skin tone because he gets his, powers from the sun and, and everything.
That's actually not a bad idea.
So,
But yeah, here's the thing though. The reasoning that like people gave him why no one's gonna believe that like Superman had like a black like ancestor. Here's why people didn't believe that. It's like, and they make a good point. They're aliens.
but I mean,
The same rules don't have to apply.
Exactly. It does not apply. That's the same thing, the same controversy of even Starfire, Corey. It's like they are aliens. They are not in that same limitation that earthbound people
Well,
think that.
in the case of Titans, I will say they made up for it because the point that people had, the point of contention that people had with Corey is that in Titans she didn't have the orange skin because that's kind of like her distinctive feature. The part where I was like, okay, I'm fine with it, is when she used her powers. That's when the skin turned orange. So I'm like, okay, that's a good compromise. The problem is they didn't give her her own costume in season 1, and I'm like, the way that she looked wasn't the best for the character.
Right. That was the controversy where she very much looked like a stereotype of, like a woman off the street
Mm-hmm.
on the corner. Definitely, she did. But it's the fact that it doesn't matter, if the character isn't defined and isn't stated to be a certain race or whatever, or they're not, or the description of, talking about their skin tone or something, then they can be whatever, you know, skin tone or ethnicity. It doesn't matter. And especially, aliens do not matter.
Yeah, the
Um,
rules that govern, like, and again, it's like if you did this with, it's like if he's concerned about the general audience not buying it, you're talking about an alien, again, an alien race. I think here's the problem: Hollywood treats the general audience like they're freaking morons. So, somewhat they are sometimes.
yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I don't want to say they're all like Albert Einstein, like people when it comes to this stuff, but I think that I also think that people don't that like they'll like I said this before. I'm pretty sure people would if you wanted to like continue the Snyderverse story. I guarantee you, people would know that David Cornsweet is a different Superman than Henry Cavill, or Tyler Hoechlin's a different Superman than Henry Cavill. I get the feeling that people would buy that. They wouldn't get confused.
Exactly. I mean, they don't look alike. So it's kind of like it's not like they're drawn or I mean, even in the animated, Crisis film, Earth 1 and Earth 2 Superman did not look alike at all.
Remember, Brit. It was actually Earth 2 Superman and Earth 1 Superboy.
Well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, the fact that even the Kents too, to say that his adoptive parents has to be, the Caucasian Midwesterners is that's going a little bit too far. Like, they don't have to be that. In this time of people embracing diversity and everything like that, I would expect, and especially if DC wants to be performative, at certain times, I would expect that they would try to be a little bit different, even if you don't want. And that's also the standard too. You have to be. I think it was a Peter Griffin meme too of kind of like a color grade of what's acceptable or not.
Hmm.
So it's like the skin tone type grade, what's acceptable within Hollywood standards or what's acceptable within even comic book standards. That it is really telling of, again, these characters have been um have existed for almost 100 years, but yet it feels like they are either regressing or stagnant in these same problematic, views.
Exactly. But it was kind of funny. Speaking of Starfire, so that got accused of being a race bending. Here's the problem with that, Britt. She's not even a white woman in the comics. That's why calling Starfire and Titans a race bending doesn't work.
Honestly, I think that comes from
I
the
mean,
fact
Orange
that
Woman, but last time I checked, there's no race that has people like legit orange.
orange. Yeah, yeah. The standards of comic book fans is very low.
Real, they are like the biggest, the most schizophrenic comic book, the most schizophrenic fandom. Anyway, but onto this. Speaking of like, so it's kind of funny. We could call Readings to a power couple, but I think that like downplays their family because the kid. Franklin has Omega level powers, and Valerie is like a hyper genius. So you could call this the power family. So it's like they're not even a power couple; they're a power family.
Right, which
Particularly their son.
exactly, which again, I don't understand how this can be accepted, but yet you have like this intense hate if Clark and Diana have a child, and say that it's eugenics, say that they just want a child that's powerful and stuff, but Franklin is right here. That even John, he was, what Taylor wrote in the first um failed book, was he was basically trying to hail him as like this new messiah, that
That he
the
was a better Superman than Clark
than
because he was
Clark.
a pacifist. Let me ask the Isbrit because I did a video in response to that, and the basic premise of the video is that you can't be a superhero and be a pacifist. Let me explain. You can be like because I compared them and that was one of the points that like Taylor said is that John's a pacifist, so he's like a better Superman. And I go, okay, let's examine that. A pacifist is someone that is averse to any type of violence forever, which first off, John gets into fights all the time. So I don't think Taylor knows what the word pacifist even means. But let's take this. Let's use his terms. Clark is not a pacifist. Clark will use violence. However, it's not his first option. It's arguably his last option. Same with Diana, but what we're talking about Clark here. So it's like you cannot be a good superhero if you are unwilling to fight. Period. So do you agree with that or disagree?
Right. At some point you're gonna have to throw hands. So
Oh yeah,
it's
exactly. It's like put this way. Clark was like very restrained against Apollo, where he goes, "So you're a god, right? Yeah, I'm gonna punch you." And then it's like he got swatted away, and then Clark goes, "All right, gloves are off, a-hole."
right. So at some point you are going to have to do that. So they're not pacifists in that way. They aren't, you know, like Mother Teresa and Gandhi, where, or even Martin Luther King, doing peaceful protests or things like that. They're not. They will throw hands. They will throw a punch. Diana, she would have to use a sword at some point, depending on the situation. Look what she did to Maxwell Lord. She had no choice, and she had to snap his neck. You know, so being a pacifist is very much a tight you walking a tightrope, because you will have to cross that line at some point. Even if you have to, they have to basically put half their foot in. They have to do something, take action. They aren't supposed to be reactive, they are supposed to be proactive.
Exactly. That was kind of my point of view. And like, if you really make a superhero a pacifist, he will be unable to protect anyone. But anyway, so then you go to, yeah, the double standard exists because it's also because here's the difference between Reed and Sue. Between Reed and Sue and Superman and Wonder Woman. Reed and Sue have been a couple their entire existence. So they do have that longevity slash, let's face it, nostalgia bonus stat, if you will. So it's like that's part of it, but it's like it's also because it's like it's actually, you know what, Britt? Why don't you express it for me? Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, the whole thing about the nostalgia thing, that as Sam Liu, he explained it that certain fans are married to a certain status quo. You know, you have your pre-crisis fans or, you know, golden age fans, you have your bronze age, silver age, you have post-crisis fans, you have post Flashpoint New 52 fans, rebirth fans, whatever current, you know, era. So you have that. But the thing is with these fans though, there are certain things that they think needs to stay the same. But at the same time, even some of those elements that stay the same, they limit still everything else around. And that's basically what Gunn did, you know, because he said that he can change certain things with the Superman movie, but it's some things that needed to stay the same. Why in the hell did he think to change the L's, you know, as
Because it's
villains?
based on comics. And I go, yeah, one comic that was an Elseworlds book.
Yeah, no. But the way you thought to drastically change that and the fundamental understanding of Superman and his heritage, uh, also the just the false advertisement of the fact that this was supposed to have Superman balance, you know, his upbringings and everything. Yet obviously you flopped with that. But it's the
What
fact
balance?
that you can't, right? It's the fact that you can't pick it, you can't cherry pick, you know, certain elements because everything has to evolve. Everything has to change at some point. But the thing is with um Reed and Sue is that they do have their breakups, you know, but at the same time it is a foundation of family and it is something that they evolve still together. And
In other
they,
words, character growth.
yes, they have that certain thing where it doesn't feel like it's the same exact coupling. It doesn't feel like the same exact relationship. They don't have that same by the numbers, step by step type thing, you know, that Lois and Clark does. Clark, he acts like a dumb galoot. You know, at some point, Lois is mean to him. Um, she, you know, he has to save her as Superman for her to get her attention. You know, then at some point she falls for Superman, or maybe she falls for Clark because they know that her falling for Superman first is very shallow, so they change it for her to fall for Clark. But at the same time, it's still very empty because you know that she's the love interest and she has to fall for one or the other, whichever one happens. And then, you know, even with the new movie, it as everyone's biggest complaint was that it felt like it was a sequel to something else. So you missed a lot of development and everything was done off screen. So you have them in a relationship for 3 months, but it's said that they don't know each other still. They're very different. They have different ideals of things, you know, just very incompatible.
And we
But
all
then,
know doing things off screen is the best way to do a story, right? But particularly if you particularly as it involves relationships.
right. But then, of course, at the end, you have to have that happy ending, whatever. So it's very much resolved very quickly, something that's, very much a throwaway. And then it's not a relationship that's very well developed within even, the moments that they have. And then you have that happy ending because it's very much expected. And that's also another thing that what kind of confused me on Twitter is that these Chloe's fans were celebrating, saying that, Clark and Lois are together in every universe and they are, but it's the expectation for them to be together. And the thing is, why are you cheering for something that's very predictable, very obvious, things that they've said about Clark and Diana in a negative term? But this is actually what they project on Clark and Diana is very much Chloe's. That is very much the whole predictable relationship that you know is going to happen, and it's you have to just accept it for what it is. It is. It's not a new story actually being told. So what else is there to explore? With
Don't
other,
question it, Brit. Just consume content.
no, I'm not gonna. That's like saying consume molded bread.
Oh my gosh, Brit. I love the way you phrase things. Jesus.
So, very much stale bread from the 1930s,
Oh, and Cameron says, but Brit, SuperWonder is predictable because it's a stereotypical jock and cheerleader. Actually,
And
wait, no. I'm going to rephrase that. Here's how these people sound. But, Brit, SuperWonder is predictable because it's stereotypical jock and cheerleader.
that is exactly how they sound. They sound very much like the loser nerd person that very much jealous of this, these certain people that are actually very nice. They aren't the jock and the cheerleader. If you know Diana, she is not a cheerleader type. Diana is very much going to be on that football field. She'll be on the track. She'll be volleyball, any type of sports. She'll be debate team and everything
Does
like that.
Diana look like the type to set out a fight? In fact,
Exactly.
there's this fantastic line. I'm going to bring this up because I've been reading through the omnibus of New 52 Supergirl. There is this absolutely amazing moment, and I wanted to tell you about this, Britt. So, in this, it's like they're fighting into Superman's fortress because Hell had taken it over. This is during the Hell on Earth event. And first off, there were some like fantastic SuperWonder moments, but so Wonder Woman stays behind a bit because she's trying to like seal the entrance to the fortress, but it's like there's lots of enemies. So they do the whole, hey, I'll hold them off. You continue on advancing. So Batman has this fantastic line. I'm trying to find it. It's one of the most hilarious. It's one of the best Batman moments. Okay, here we go. All right. So she's like, by my honor, none shall pass. And then Superboy says, I may not be all that socially aware, but leaving Wonder Woman behind doesn't strike me as the most gentlemanly course of action. And then Batman goes, you don't know Diana. The easiest way to offend her is by trying to keep her out of a fight.
Exactly. So it's kind of like the whole thing very much doesn't make sense. And then even Clark, turning him into a jock was very much a Burn thing of having him this all-American, all-star type football player with actually cheerleader Lana. So again, the whole projection but pre-crisis and New 52 Clark was very much a science guy. I don't think he, in for New 52, I don't think he was shown as playing football or any type of sports.
Not really, no.
He was very much into science. So, again, it's very much projection. But yeah, the the thing is, as I said, when we compare these couples, and most of them are traditional, we do make it a point to talk about the double standards because if this couple is praised for being together, first as supers, second, if they are to have a child, but yet, again, this intense hate and this, you know, accusations of whatever they want to come up with, Clark and Diana, doesn't that apply to these other couples? But no, only because the only reason why these couples are accepted is because they are in that sense of traditional, you know, in that traditional category. Clark and Diana's relationship, it does, you know, break a couple of molds. You know, it breaks those traditional thought processes. It's um it's unpredictable. And also they have this multifaceted relationship, and as we explored in the Shelterverse, is that when close fans talk about Clark and Lois being together in every verse, again, it's the same exact
I was
storyline,
about
y'all.
to say that's not the brag that you think it
That's
is.
it's the same exact thing. But when we, you know, talk about Clark and Diana and having our multiverse, we have them as just friends. We have them as even enemies. You know, we have them as exes or, you know, different, you know, relationships that still connects them together. And that is how you build a foundation and showing that they don't have to be romantic all the time. You know, one of the things that we do love about Clark and Diana is that their relationship is still built on a friendship first and being built on trust and honesty and having each other's backs, you know. And then later on, when it's actually earned, then we build on to them having a romantic relationship. But other than
Exactly.
that, you know, but what really makes us gravitate to this relationship is the friendship that's founded first. And a lot of these traditional relationships or just relationships, period, you know, writers don't know how to write that. They don't know how to write a genuine friendship first and
Lord
then
knows
build
Tom
on.
King doesn't know how to write about an actual human relationship.
Right. I mean, they think that romance is being obsessive or, you know, and also the fact that even with the Superman movie, um, it said the inspiration was Good Girl Friday, where this couple was divorced. They was reporters and they end up the guy he wants to get his ex back, but at the end she basically said that she loved him, but it's kind of like a pity love, you know. That and you know that really that was what the Superman movie felt like when for to have Clark say that he wants to tell Lois that he loves her, and you know 3 months within a relationship, a real relationship takes 4 seasons, and that's a whole year before you really, you know, commit to that person because 3 months, yeah, you were friends first and everything, but you have to see exactly does this relationship actually have longevity as you have put in your head basically. And for you to say that even with him being in Metropolis only for 3 months, 3 years, he still does not have a solid foundation for himself either. So you're not only trying to build a relationship on something. First, you have this expectation and it's already starting off rocky. You've told your audience but not shown them, you know, why should we care about this relationship? And then again, the expectation of it being at the end of the movie they have to be together without actually going through, you know, showing them as even friends. You just telling us that they're in love, but you're not really showing us that. You know, that's the issue with a lot of these relationships. And with Clark and Diana's relationship, we are actually shown, that build through through even the decades. New 52, yeah, they could have done a little bit better with even flashbacks if Sewell were to be given, more time, or um, Jeff Johns would have filled in the blanks between the 5-year gap that he, created for the Justice League. But we still felt that genuine uh, of their relationship regardless.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and by the way, Parker, I'm there with you, but there's some good DC stuff out there. I don't want to make you think there isn't. Read the Absolute books for like Superman and Wonder Woman stuff. That's the only Wonder Woman book I have in my pull list. It's fantastic. But anyway, so Britt, here's the other reason why I think there's a double standard. Because there's also fan gatekeeping. Because remember, the Superman Wonder Woman fandom has been taking a beating. That's partly why we created this show, to say, hey, there are people that like this stuff. And it's like, that's the thing. I'm like, and this is why I say on the show all the time. It's like, look, if you don't like this, you don't have to be an a-hole about it. Hell, Robert's a co-host on the channel, and he has told me he sees them more as friends. And I go, hey, that works out for you, bro. And it's like, he's the biggest Lois fan I know, but because he's a nice, because he gets the idea of, look, everyone, what Jim Lee has said, if you're a fan of anything with the DC logo on it, you are a DC fan. That's it. That's the way this works. No ifs, ands, or buts. So I don't get why this stuff is like messed up like this.
Because everyone has to think the same. You have to be like sheep.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
also, it's like Zack Snyder actually talked about this, and this is the umpteenth time I'm going to bring up Zack Snyder on this channel. When he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and they were talking about the backlash that he got for some of the stuff that he wanted to do with like the DCEU. And one of the things he said is like, no, because for some of these people, for some of these people, it is their like religion. And he goes, and he was more like congenial about it than I would be. He goes, no, well, to be clear, it's my religion too. I love comics, but it's like, that's ultimately what it kind of is. A lot of these people treat it like it is like their number one religion. And I go, it's kind of not good.
Oh yeah, a lot of people worship these characters, and they feel like, they want to live vicariously through these characters. So again, as I said earlier, with the civilian love interest, they feel like that is their power fantasy, their wish fulfillment. They can live vicariously through Lois or Steve, to think that Clark and Diana, as these powerful beings, are in love with just these mere, very average mortals. That's how they think. And we see that all the time on Twitter. Some people, very disturbing in the way they talk about these characters, the way they sexualize them. So yeah, is very much just a living.
I mean, Britt,
through.
you've gotten the N-word sent to you over this.
Yes, I've gotten threats of, if I don't, apologize for being a SuperWonder supporter, then, it will be consequences, and, I only have a limited time to, apologize and praise Lois, be on the side of Lois and everything like that. Yes, they definitely sound like a cult, and it's very, very disturbing.
And they call Snyder fans the cult.
Yeah, every fandom is every fandom has their bad apples. You know, we aren't saying that there hasn't been any SuperWonder fans that
Hmm.
have gone a little bit too far. But honestly, it's not as bad as these other fandoms. Like these other fandoms, they are also married to their own headcanons too. And when DC doesn't comply to or validate what they have as headcanon, then they will, you know, start busting arteries as well. You know, so it's at some point it's true that some of these fans need to go outside and go touch grass at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So then you get yeah, it's because again the double standard, and I'm gonna bring this up. I'm gonna play this clip again because it could not because I've said it many times that none of this makes sense.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Yeah, there could not be any more appropriate a clip for this because I'm like, Parker says, I recall the Lois fan asked me to apologize for liking Superman. It's really weird. No, here's what I would say. Yeah, I apologize. I'm still gonna like Super Wonder. Or here's what you do. You say, I'm sorry you have a problem with it. Now leave me alone.
Yeah, I mean, why do we have to apologize for being different? You know, that just goes into everyone has a unique perspective of certain things. Everyone has their opinion. Whether you agree or disagree, that whatever. There are some things where it's kind of like, okay, no, that's going too far. You're wrong. That's that, you know, especially when it comes to Diana being sexualized or, you know, Wonder Bat fans thinking that she is supposed to be play nurse for Bruce or, you know, things like that. Then, yeah, that is when we say, no, you crossed the line. That's wrong. But if
Yeah.
you have the respect for the character and you have respect for other relationships as well, you know, you can in a sense, just Google Superman and Wonder Woman. And you have, of course, AI is all over the place. So you have the AI overview. And it says that it's basically a 50-50 thing with them, is that they have the foundation of a friendship. They are friends. They are close allies. They basically best friends. But they also have a romantic history that is, you know, that. But a lot of these fans want to ignore that, want to, um, or say that's not true, the whole revisionist thing that Jurgens did of that it never happened, things like that. And it's kind of like, why? Because these are fictional characters. They're not real people. And hell, even real people, they have multiple relationships and everything. So it's not unheard of for these characters to be in different relationships. And again, this is showing different perspectives and facets of the characters when you're able to explore different relationships. I'm not understanding why it's so difficult and why would fans and writers, especially if you're supposed to be like creative, this is, you know, that type of field. Why would you want to limit the storytelling by continuing on with just one relationship? And again, there's a difference though of Reed and Sue being together for all this time, being married and everything, because they have evolved together, because there are different stories told with them being together. With Lois and Clark, that's the difference, is that they follow the same formula, basically. You know, you got to add a little bit of seasoning somewhere within that, and they just don't. Adding a pinch of salt is not the way to go.
Exactly,
Um,
exactly.
And then with Clark and Diana, again, their relationship is very multifaceted. And as I said, you can explore their relationship in different ways. You know, you can have them as antagonists. You can have them as um, a full-on romance. You can have them as just friends, or even just, um even Earth 2, when they had Diana way older and Clark and Bruce was kids, but they grew up to be, the best of friends. Clark and Diana still had that bond of trusting each other. And again, we have the Shelterverse where Clark and Diana, there are stories where they are strangers, and meeting to build that type of trust um, and getting to know each other, that type of thing. So it,
Exactly.
and even changing their the background, their life, basically where they came from, to see if they can still be written, basically still with their core values, but you just change, the environment and see where that takes you. That is what you're supposed to do with these characters. Be creative.
Yeah, exactly. But speaking of fiction, so so as you guys know, whenever Britt and I do a couples comparison, we have to write a little fiction crossover story. So Britt, tell us a little bit about Legacy of Tomorrow. By the way, fantastic power name.
Thank you. Okay, so this is very much inspired by the fact of watching Fantastic Four, with a Franklin introduction, and also just Clark and Diana's, um, just the whole thing of them having children and the double standard. So this is very much, as always, we have these meta commentary type stories. So this is what this is. So the crossover, of course, we always have our multiversal riff that merges, or opens up that sort of, uh, opens the boundaries between Earth Zero DC and Earth 616 from Marvel. The world of the Justice League and Fantastic Four collide, with the expectations of the family, the expectation of um,
Real quick, hang on, and Cameron, no, we're not doing spoilers because that's like at the very end of this stream. I'll give you a heads up before we go into spoilers.
right.
Let's go ahead.
So Clark and Diana, they are seasoned heroes. Um, they are they have their children, Laura and Jonathan. And then on the other side is Reed and Sue with Franklin and Valeria. I want to say Valerie for some reason, but Valeria, the two most powerful children in the Marvel universe. So, of course, we have to combine or have Galacticus and Darkseid drawn very much of uh, towards um, Richard, Franklin, and Valeria, and also Laura and Jonathan.
And
So,
a fun fact, Britt, Galactus and Darkseid was another Marvel DC crossover issue they did.
really, so wow, that is
You
perfect.
are so good at this.
So, basically they have to fight for their children and the family and the perception of the world. So
Yeah,
this
exactly.
so the themes and the meta commentary. Again, this is also inspired by our double standard talk from earlier. So the story, deeply explores the whole emotional and moral strain of raising children, that could destroy the world and could save it. Of course, their children will be heroes, but it's still that perception of, the public that thinks that, oh, they will grow up to be tyrants or something. Clark and Diana are often criticized for their relationship. It has always been criticized, of course. So with them having children, it's like, now what, what more can we take with the judgments and stuff like that? So they are struggling with, have we basically made a mistake of bringing these innocent souls into a world full of judgment and harshness and not trying to give them a chance? And how can we protect our children from that type of scrutiny if it's basically hurting us still.
God
Then
damn it,
reading
Britt.
Sue,
And now I gotta send you a crying cat gif.
and then this is also a little bit of inspiring Odyssey too. So,
Yep,
we got
there you
that.
go.
Um,
As soon as I read this, I was like, yeah, Britt's gonna use that.
yeah. So you also have reading Sue that's beloved as, as they are, but again, that knowing that their child or children have this power that is even unpredictable and more powerful than even them combined is kind of like, okay, how will the world react? So the comic culture, again, you have that meta commentary of DC world, and I love that page that Sewell had in Superman and Wonder Woman 4, where it was all the commentary of different people. You had Apollo and Ares, not Ares, Arrows. You had Steve talking to Etta, I believe. You had
No, it was Amanda
Hal,
Waller.
Amanda Water, my bad. Well, Amanda and Etta look alike, in rebirth.
But
So
Cameron brings up a great point. Speaking of that, he goes, I just know some a dumbass, cough, Steve, cough, created a task force to counter Lara and John. Yeah.
yes, yes. You have Hal and Barry saying about Hal
Man's
saying he
got no
called,
respect for dibs. I love that.
right,
And then Barry's like, dude, the fact that your whole attitude is why she's dating him.
right. So, all of that. So that page also inspired, just that talk basically that the public would have for Clark and Diana. And
Mm-hmm.
then Sue, again, they are still, it's still a more positive side for them because they're so accepted as,
Mm-hmm.
this first family, as, being trusted by their world. And that's the difference between Marvel and DC, is that DC is very much, again, stuck with tradition, stuck with this is the way things are supposed to be. You can't um, change this and that. Anything that's different, it has to be put under a microscope, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's not being preachy, you know, but at the same time, it's just as we are doing delving into the conversations. The character roles. So Clark and Diana are inspired by Kingdom Come and like a Dark Knight Returns type uh, hybrid in a sense. So they are older, they are hardened, with the world being they've spent all this time trying to protect the world, trying to not so much as gain acceptance, but just trust that they aren't going to turn into tyrants. They aren't going to turn their backs on the world, that they love the world. They love, life itself. So why would they ruin that? Then Clark, as Kingdom Come Superman, he has the embodiment of faith, despite his disillusionment. He is still idealistic, he still has this hope that maybe the world will turn around and see that n- not all power is bad power.
Mm-hmm.
Diana, she is the bridge between war and peace and tradition and modern way of thinking. She's basically the woman of the DC universe that she breaks the mold that of, female expectation. That you think that this woman, regardless of her power, is supposed to be or end up as a trade wife, a housewife, Tom King. But or she gives up certain things to create some random Chucky baby, no. Diana, even if she is to have a child, she will still be Wonder Woman in some way. She will still be the ambassador for women and children as needed, you know. Um, With Reed and Sue, they are the mature couple. They've gone through hell and back, so they are pretty much they're strong within any type of criticism. But again, their criticism is not on the level as Clark and Diana. So they can just be themselves and just guide their children, you know. The children, Laura, she's very much Dark Knight Returns Laura. She is just the same, you know, as in the Golden Child story, where she was trying to find her place, that she wants to um she has a sort of resentment for Man's World of how they've scrutinized her and, you know, her family, but at the same time she does still have that love, you know, and it's just a natural thing for her to um be a hero, you know, but she wants to have her own perspective of what type of hero she wants to be. Jonathan, he's very hopeful and empathetic. He's kind of like the again, the Jonathan that was from a golden age, where he still sees the beauty and pretty much like the baby Buddha, and also a mix of Kingdom Come Jonathan that we saw. I still It doesn't make sense that Dan Mora made such a great design for Kingdom Come um, John, and we don't see it again. Like, that is very much a waste of a design. Um,
Exactly.
Franklin is the cosmic reality shaper. You know, he is definitely the powerhouse of, you know, and Valeria, very brilliant, you know, the strategist. She has a sense of humor and loyal. So the plot.
So, by the way, I just want to say one thing. When I picked these two pictures of Galactus and Darkseid, I didn't notice how perfectly
Per-
they mirror each other.
Definitely perfect.
I'm
Definitely
like,
perfect.
now I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my god.
Right. So, so again, as I said in the summary, the worlds collide. You know, Clark, Laura, and Jonathan. They are the ages of 17 and 14, so they are getting of age to understand. You know, and understand the world, and also choosing their paths. Um, they they have to wrestle with being the son and daughter of perceived gods, even though Clark and Diana have said multiple times, we are not gods. You know, we basically, that's a whole nother story. But of course, we have to have the gods within here, and they are menaces, you know, still at their old, very, very old age of, you know, especially with John and Laura. I always want to have that as a constant for our stories, that the gods see Clark and Diana's kids as either threats, or they want to mold them in their eyes too.
Yeah, I like
Um,
that.
so Franklin, he's a teenager after some cosmic rebalancing, and as you stated with the fan theory, that's kind of like he wants to stay as like a teenager or whatever. So so that must be a real thing, you know. And he he has like these visions with Galacticus of the the world destruction, and also the entire universe. I love that image of Franklin, where he looks like this cosmic entity. I think it was at the beginning.
You mean, okay, I think I used that one. You mean here?
That one, yes, it definitely gave that. Yeah, he's a total different entity. I will see why a villain like Galacticus would want him, because this image right here is so powerful, and shows his abilities in such a celestial type way.
Yeah, I
Um,
dig that. Yeah, it's a good way to visually show it.
and then Valeria, she is just like her father. She is so smart, but she has this sort of paranoia, but she knows, basically what's happening, and she can help, figure out what's going on to stop it before it gets worse. So Darkseid and Galacticus, they have this reluctant reliance alliance, but they have that common goal of wanting these powerful children. So part two is where the Justice League um, and the Fantastic Four meet. They first, of course, we have to have like a civil type battle before they realize that no, they are on the same team. And Diana and Sue, they bond over being mothers and the matriarchs, and they have that sort of talk about their roles as mothers and how their families aren't the traditional type families. Um, and Sue, she because she's a little bit older, she kind of reminds Diana that, you know, she can make this work. That um a it is a battlefield, but at the same time, as the warrior as she is in loving her family, she can, make this work. Clark and Reed, they basically share the man of science type thing. And Clark, he wasn't paranoid at first, but now he is because of his children. So he's basically like Reed, of how he's trying to figure out certain things to make things easier, to prepare for the worst at times. He is very on edge and very overprotective at some points. So it's Diana that has to ease him from that. Um, then so you have that, still the ongoing thing where it's mentioned about, the meta commentary of how the children are still very much at the center of this problem, and because of their powers. So
Exactly.
part
Real quick, Cameron brings up an interesting thing. OMG, imagine Franklin is meditating, then he sees Darkseid. Darkseid notices and says, "You are not allowed here," or something scary. And Franklin screams, and that's how you get the plot. Ooh, that's how Darkseid is aware of the Marvel universe.
very interesting, very. So a part three. Now Galacticus has arrived, and he is seeking Franklin to reshape, the a dying galaxy. So they all have their motivations for certain things. And Darkseid is now invading the DC Earth, and he's hunting for Laura, and he wants her to be basically his Grail. So we're not using actual Grail. Laura is going to become Grail. Well,
Oh, I
essentially.
love that idea. That's a great idea.
So the rift is expanding, is becoming weaker. So the weaker the boundary becomes, the more powerful and um Galacticus and Darkseid becomes, and also just that the more danger, and the existence of their worlds cease. So the kids, they come together, and they're like, we're going to save the world and the galaxies, our worlds, this time. Our parents, they've done so much. We are going to basically prove ourselves. So Laura and Franklin, being that they are the ones that Galacticus and Darkseid is after, they team up. And being the oldest, and then Jonathan and Valeria, they are basically the ones that use their brain and their compassion, and they do want that normal type way of living, because they see the they are more intellectuals than physical. you know. So they have that certain sense of wanting peace.
Oh,
Um,
Dave has a fantastic line. You remind me of my friend back home, except you're not psychotic, don't dress like a giant bat, and haven't tried to kill me. Seems like you need better friends. That would be so. That's such a
Well,
good. We need that would be a great interaction between like Reed and Superman.
right, right. Um, so now we're on part four, which this is where the world the worlds end up colliding anyway, of course. We are in the battle zone. Laura, she confronts Darkseid. She's going in and out of being possessed, but you know, everything that her parents has taught her, especially Diana, and trying to just hone in her powers and keep her sense of self. You have Franklin that's fighting back Galacticus, and he too is on edge, but he has the strength of Sue. Sue and Diana are trying to keep the multiverse tear stabilized. Then Clark gives Jonathan basically this pep talk, that he is not just the son of Superman. He is his own hero and he can do, whatever he wants to do. There's no expectations, there's no pressure, you know, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to be, I'm still your dad, I still love you, that whole emotional moment there. And then Reed does the same thing with Valeria, is basically give her that he's proud of her, and the fact that she's smarter than him, he's very much proud of that. So Clark and Diana, Sue and Reed are very proud parents. And that is what give the kids even more strength to defeat Galacticus and Darkseid. So part five, of course, they are defeated, but it's again the emotional clarity of the families that they've went through basically a emotional journey to accept that our families are vastly unique than normal families. We are going to go through things that other families do not, which is fighting bad guys and supervillains and intergalactical invasions and stuff like that. But this is our family and this is what we do. Um, so the rifts are closing. Diana and Sue, they exchange basically words of wisdom as mothers. You have Laura, Jonathan, Franklin, and Valeria. They say their goodbyes and know that they are friends. And basically, they have, in a sense, their own little Justice League, type thing, little Young Justice, in a sense, hero group now across the multiverse. Um, so the portals uh, close, now the families are trying to just get back to themselves. So the conclusion, this is basically saying, what will happen to the next generation and how will the world still see them. They and basically what can they do to make it a little bit better? That yeah, they are going to go through things, but how can as parents, do something better? And that is basically what parents do all the time, in the real world. They want their child or children to have better. Yes, you're going to go through judgments and people, relationships and friends that you thought were your friends that might, leave at certain points in your life and everything. But we have prepared you to go through any and everything. Um, so there will also be a press conference. And again, that is inspired by the movie and everything, where the families of their respective worlds, um, they are addressing the public. And they're basically telling the public, like, you can take it or leave it, but we are a family. We love each other. We will always be together. And, you know, we will always do our jobs, but we are, here to stay. And like I said, you can take it or leave it. So the last thing is Diana's speech. I always have to have Diana, say a speech because she is the ambassador of the mascara. But not only that, but Diana is, I see her as she, as the years pass and her work as ambassador becomes more important and becomes larger than she ever expected. So it's like she is this global ambassador, you know, and so she does have her critics, but at the same time, she can have that reach with her voice. So, with her speech, she says, I know many of you have questions about our love, about it, which she's talking about her and Clark, um, about our children, about what it means to for symbols, or as you think of us as symbols, to fall in love and start a family. But I will not apologize for love. I am proud of who I am, proud to be an Amazon, proud to serve the world, proud to be a mother. I am proud to have my husband. Yes, our Clark and Diana do get married.
Suck it, haters.
They honestly, I see them as spiritually married, but they also have the ceremony to get married. So
Mm-hmm.
either way, you can, but she does call him husband. Um, by my side, a man of compassion, strength, and unshakable hope. Cal and I fell in love not because of our powers, but because of our understanding of one another. We share a vision for this world, one that rises above fear and limitation. Our children are not weapons. They are not tools of prophecies. They are our hearts. I am proud of who they are and who I know they will become. I embrace everything that makes them unique. I do not fear their power. I trust their character. And if we must stand before the world again to remind you that love, family, and future are not privileges reserved for some, then we will every time. You know, our Diana, she speaks her mind. So she definitely will say in a very kind way, screw you. But, again, she says it in an educational, very polite manner. So at the end, you see the families still in their uh, respective worlds, but you see how they go about every day, for the duration, and maybe like an epilogue or something like that. And that will be the end where the families are happy.
I love that. That's great. Barry, that Diana speech was great. I could literally imagine that as like the ending of like a long run and like all the different panels and stuff, because you could split that up. It's as she's like talking about certain things. You say like, the kid's doing stuff, Clark doing stuff.
Exactly.
So it's really, I could definitely see that. I love that.
Exactly. The that is exactly the vision that I had with Diana's speech, is that, and just the ending of showing that they are doing different things, again, whether the world likes it or not. And also they don't have secret identities. So that's even better.
Hell yeah. Now, speaking of Wonder Woman, we're gonna do our reviews. So, Absolute Wonder Woman number 10. Fantastic book, by the way. And number 2, bestseller of the week behind Batman Hush, which we expected that. So, it's like, the point is, it's in the top 5. Now, I love the look of Diana with her little armor. And it's like, as a little girl, baby Diana will never stop being cute.
Right. She is so adorable.
And it's like the way that's like they're preparing her to be a warrior, and even like Cersei's like Cersei wants Diana to be able to be a regular kid, and it's like, oh, why does she have to be like the night? See, this is kind of funny about this. I thought about this when I was reading the issue, and yes, I rate this a 10 out of 10. This is Kelly Thompson basically saying, I could have made her like Kratos, but it's better this way, because it's like legit. Cersei asked Hecate, why did you make her so nice? And then Hecate goes, because that's what people won't expect. And I go, oh my gosh, you're making a meta take on it, but it's so well done. And Diana protecting like a turtle against a bloody panther. It's like, this woman clearly understands Diana, and it really helps, particularly on our next slide. So we'll talk about that. But oh my, it's like the more I read this, the more, first off, the coloring on this, particularly with the cover, is unbelievable. Helps that it won an Eisner. That I should tell you something. But it's like, it's just the, and also here's the thing. It's like, I could not like, and by thank you, me Zero. It's good to see you, man. Oh, that panther is the goddess Artemis. Oh, okay. So I was wondering about that. It's just the idea how like here's the thing, Brenton. Tell me if you feel this way too. It's to the point where sometimes I forget that that's Cersei because it sounds like it's coming from Hippolyta. That's how well done this is.
Exactly. And the thing is, to make a great Wonder Woman story, the foundation has to be a mother and daughter relationship, and it has to be solid. It can't be toxic or anything like that. And yeah, Cersei is definitely written as Hippolyta should be, as Hippolyta has been before. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was, or if, Thompson, she kind of thinks of Hippolyta as she writes that. And just, of course, we have to slap on Cersei's name and her design. But yeah, that is something that Thompson really nails, though, that regardless of anything, regardless of the character, a mother and daughter relationship has to be the foundation of the Wonder Woman book. Tom King, take notes.
Oh yeah, exactly. But it's like it's even with this, it's like also the idea. I love this line where Cersei sees Diana, she's just laying there because she's protecting the little turtle, and she goes, "You'd be proud, Mama. I did good." And then Cersei goes, "Oh my darling little girl, your heart shines so bright it puts even the gods to shame." And I go, "Oh, the shade! Oh my gosh!" It's just again, it's like, see. This is the thing. I've said this many times, but I'm just going to say it again. This feels like this is just regular Wonder Woman done well, because it's like none of this seems out of character or like not anything Diana would do. And again, this blew my mind as soon as reading Cersei and Hecate, they talk about why Diana's so nice and why she has to be a little girl and stuff, because it's like no one takes them seriously, so she'll have that advantage. And I go, oh my gosh, this is so great.
Right. Kelly Thompson definitely deserves a mainline Wonder Woman run. I would say that she should have taken over this book, and not King. But then we wouldn't have absolute Wonder Woman.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing, but on that, absolute one, she wasn't as big of a name with DC. That's the thing. Because here's the big point here. Because this series, particularly with its Eisner winning, gives Kelly Thompson much more cachet with Wonder Woman. That's the thing, because beforehand she was just doing like Birds of Prey and stuff, or she wasn't doing like that many like big books at DC. This shows people as she can handle Diana, and the fact that this book consistently sells amazingly, it keeps that in people's minds, particularly when compared to the multi Eisner Award losing Tom King Wonder Woman series. That has a nice ring to it.
Right. And I think, the way that Absolute Wonder Woman was supposed to be presented was she was supposed to be kind of like this brutal god of war, because she was raised in hell.
And let's
That
face it, remember, Scott Snyder was supposed to write this book. If he had written this book, it would have been that.
and that honestly shows Scott's like thinking of Diana, and it's kind of like he already has this weird Michael Bay-esque, Frank Miller Batman on steroids type, or Bane Bat hybrid thing going on with Absolute Batman. And while it has its moments, it's still very much like the fanboy fantasy of a 13-year-old, you know, without, it doesn't have the substance that Absolute Wonder Woman has, that Kelly Thompson has put into the character, because she's still very much Diana at her core, regardless of being raised in hell. She still loves, the underworld animals, or, creatures, or whatever they are. She still puts the world first. She still wants to be a hero. And again, the mother and daughter relationship is
the other
front and
thing,
center.
yes, exactly. The first panel, I want to read this because this is like chills. All right, she says, the vortex of your charm and compassion is bewildering to behold. It leaves one breathless, aching to be better. There are many things I might say to you now, Diana, but they feel redundant. I don't have to give you advice because you'll know what to do, what is right. It's almost hypnotic to experience you. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like Cersei, and this is something that Cersei said all the way in issue 1, where she says it's like Diana had this. I wouldn't be surprised if Kelly Thompson puts in that that Absolute Diana has it's legit a passive power where when you're around her, you're more peaceful and more like hopeful for the world. I wouldn't be surprised.
Exactly. I mean, she is supposed to be the inspiration, and it's a shame that, again, mainline Diana is far from this. She is, it's embarrassing, and even with Tom King's whole, oh, she's rebelling against the sovereign. First of all, nobody cares about that old dusty vulture
Not
thing.
anymore.
I mean, they never cared. And then the whole Mouseman thing of her liberating an island, again, is very contrived, because if an island needed liberated, first of all, Superman had the War World story saga.
Yeah.
If he liberated a planet, don't you think he would liberate an island of people? That's another thing that's very contradictory of this whole story. And again, she chose to, at first, she was basically moving like molasses, in order to save her sisters, or avenge them from the sovereign, who were tortured, um, imprisoned, and also trafficked, until Steve died. And then that's why she's so angry and wants to avenge Steve only. And then she creates this daughter, and it's not even for her own benefit. It's for the Super Sons. It's for Steve. It's not for Diana's legacy. It's just using her name. So you are dismantling the mother-daughter relationship. You are putting a man, which Steve, front and center, and also the Super Sons and the Batman and Superman. You are not writing Diana with a compassionate bone in her body. You know, she's very stiff, no personality whatsoever, and it just doesn't feel like her. It doesn't feel like she's a character. And also she's suffering basically because DC knows the controversy of Tom King, and the fact that at SDCC we heard nothing about Diana's book, nothing about,
Well,
you
you
know,
know why,
any.
Britt? Here's the thing. All right, so here's what happened. Here's what I think happened. Because they know that the minute they do a panel for Wonder Woman, the fans are going to ask, "Why does your series suck?" Because this happened with Spider-Man. Because around the time that like Kamala Khan like died, like a couple of like I think months afterwards, that they had New York Comic Con panel where they did like a Spider-Man panel, and they were holding up like, here's what's gonna happen later, and then fans audibly groaned. Then they're asking questions like, why don't you want Peter and MJ back together and stuff? It's like all this stuff. DC knows that that's what would happen. Plus,
Yeah,
we know that DC is likely aware there's a hashtag campaign to get the man off the book.
that's true. That's true.
Watch every time someone asks a question and that they end it before they hand the mic over, they go hashtag King off Wonder Woman.
I mean,
That's what I would do.
if you know, and especially with your main line, knowing that the main line is just utterly disastrous, yeah, you would think that DC at this time would be thinking of, okay, maybe we do need a reboot. Instead, they are having like, I mean, even DCKO, Scott Snyder's new, you know, crossover. The fact that he said that this is a slugfest and basically a power scaling type thing, it's like, okay, again, where's the substance of these stories? You just want a lot of power scaling. You want a lot of fights and turning these characters into just brutes. You know, that was a problem really with his Justice League run, because it felt like that's what that was, that they were just fighting. You know, it's nothing that feels genuine of their character. And
Yeah.
even Diana, we didn't hear like, does she have a role besides fighting? Does she has an actual like prominent role within the event? And it doesn't seem like it, you know. So yeah, it's definitely a problem within DC, and I honestly blame Tom King, and uh, I wouldn't say DCEU or Godot image imaging. I wouldn't say that, because Superman has had a lot of failed movies, and you know, he's had a lot of um uh, stories that have, you know, had the audience say that he's boring, you know, certain things like that. But that never stopped DC from giving him chance after chance, you know. Diana, she actually had a popularity boost and everything like that. She's very much the most recognized DC female character, and still very popular with the general audience, with the global, you know, general audience, and yet nothing.
Yeah.
That really just doesn't make sense to me.
But speaking of Comic-Con, okay, now we're gonna talk with the Eisners. So this is something that I want to start off. So we're gonna go through some of the categories on this, and we're gonna talk about it because okay, so for best continuing series, the contenders were the Santos sisters, the Department of Truth, Detective Comics, Fantastic Four, Ultimate Spider-Man, Wonder Woman by Tom King. Guess who won? Not Tom King. And then wait, I have a clip I'm going to play. I'm going to go through all the categories, and I am going to tell you who didn't win. So let's do this. So not Tom King.
Le who? The her.
All right, next one. Where's the next one? Best limited series. Zatanna, Alan Scott, Animal Pound, which is essentially Tom King's bastardization of Animal Farm. Helena Windelhorn, the Deviant, or Ray Flares. And Helen Windelhorn is essentially his version of like fantasy, creating yet another drunk pirate girl. Guess who didn't win? Wait. No. Guess who won? Britt, guess who won?
Oh, who?
Not Tom King.
Le who? The her.
So happy. So happy. So now here's the thing. You guys have heard us say forever that the Eisners don't really matter, and they don't. But here's why we're celebrating this. Because the Eisners give writers ammunitions to get more projects and stay on books. And here's the thing. I was concerned that if the Wonder Woman series won an Eisner, then he would stay on this. But by the way, this is the second time it's gotten nominated, and the second time it has lost. So from now on, I vote, and I want the community involved on this. I vote that we from now on refer to his series as the Multi-Eisner Award Losing Series. Are you guys cool with that? Shall we do that? Is that okay? Is that good?
Here's the thing. Yeah, the Eisners is basically like the Oscars, that is some things that win, and it's basically a popularity contest. So Tom King, they know how controversial his run is, and also probably you would think that they would try to basically kiss his feet because he is the consultant of the DCU with Gunn. And yeah, you would think that he would win because of those, those odds, and also just the fact that despite the controversy, he is a popular writer amongst the writers and the company themselves, and sometimes it makes it feel like fan opinion does not matter with this certain thing. And there has been a lot of controversy, behind the scenes with the Eisners. So yeah, you would think that it doesn't matter anymore because they just give away this award for, like I said, a popularity contest. But they would use that, and especially how they do make it seem like it's such a big deal of if this was an Eisner, not only was it nominated, but also a winner, then yeah, we would have Tom King still on his book and worse for Wonder Woman.
And they would double down on it. That's why I'm celebrating this, because with this and the declining sales, and because think about it this way, Britt, it would be bad PR to kick a writer off a book that just got where his run just won an Eisner. So that's why it would be significantly harder. And even with the declining sales. So now that it has lost, it makes it all the more good. Now, here's the other thing on the other side. Now, it would have been bittersweet if no Wonder Woman book won anything. But then we got the colorist for Absolute Wonder Woman 1 for best coloring. And I agree, because it's like, even when you look at the coloring for issue 10, like, look at the coloring on that cover, Britt.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
So I'm like, justified. But it also beat out Absolute Batman for best new series. And I
Deserved.
go, well deserved. Oh my gosh, yes. It's like, this book is single-handedly saving the Wonder Woman fandom.
Right.
Like, by the way, hats off to Kelly Thompson and Hayden Sherman. Great job. But absolutely, this is like the biggest FU to Tom King, because his think of how great it is. His Wonder Woman run lost everything, but the Wonder Woman run that people actually like won its stuff. Am I a little bitter that Kelly Thompson didn't win Best Writer? Oh, that's another one. Best Writer. Guess who won?
Not Tom King.
Good idea.
Le who? The her.
I'm keeping that from now on. But by the way, so yeah, he didn't win. He didn't even win Best Writer. Granted, Kelly Thompson did not win that, but at least she won something. Absolute Wonder Woman won something. Well deserved.
Right, right.
But again, I am just that was me. I have never reloaded Bleeding Cool so many times that I did last night because I was trying because because Rich was updating it in real time, so it's like I kept trying to update it, and I was like checking off. Okay, here are all the titles that Tom King was nominated for, as they came out. He didn't win. Then it got down to the last one, which was best continuing series. I didn't even care who won as long as Tom King didn't win. So it was like I'm watching this. I'm keep going, particularly his Wonder Woman one. So I'm watching it, and then Rich kept updating the wins for. They announced the wins for the other series. So I'm like, just get to absolute Wonder Woman. Then when Zatanna won, I was like, okay, that's dope. I like that. That's a good one. Yeah. So I was like, a lot of the series that I personally liked, but maybe didn't catch up to one, but still. And also NJ, her Wonder Woman run, yes, I'm counting this being an Eisner winning series now. This also makes it more likely she now has more ammunition to go into DC and say, hey, give me the main Wonder Woman book.
True.
Because then she can say, hey, I just won your Wonder Woman from Hell series. I just won. I just gave a Wonder Woman book and Eisner.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's very, very cool. And hang on, I'm trying to look up how many Eisners have a Wonder Woman book one. I want to see how often does a Wonder Woman book get one. It has won at least 6 Eisners. So the True Amazon by Kelly by Jill Thompson won 3 Eisners, with one specifically for the book. Historia won Best Single Issue and Best Graphic Novel reprint in 2024. And Absolute Wonder Woman won 2 awards: Best New Series and Best Coloring. So that tells you how rare it is that Wonder Woman wins something. So that's why, again, let me put it this way. If Tom King still lost, but Absolute Wonder Woman lost everything, I would be a little bit like, oh, come on, man. But I would also be like, at least he didn't win. This makes it all the sweeter.
Right.
And Dave brings up the good point. Kelly Thompson deserves all the flowers and praise that she can possibly get for this series. And I really, really, really hope that I get to interview her one day to thank her for this. Because this is this series has been a godsend. Because again, it's the reason why. So I have technically dropped Tom King's Wonder Woman twice. The first time it was because of a lot of really BS stuff in the book. But I went back to it because I didn't have an alternative. And then when this came out, I was like, I can drop now. Because this is literally, like I said when we talked about issue 10, this is literally just regular Diana in a more extreme world. That is all it is. And she has a couple of bonus powers. But beyond that, this is Wonder Woman as far as I'm concerned. And this is the book, besides Green Lantern, that whenever it comes out and it's in my bag, I'm like, ooh, Absolute Wonder Woman month.
Right.
It is absolutely, pun intended, unbelievable. And congrats to Kelly Thompson and Tom King. One more to you, sir.
Le who? The her.
NJ, let's focus on getting King off the Wonder Woman book first. Then we'll work on that, because I have enough issues running one campaign when people don't follow the goddamn rules of the campaign. so Britt can tell you, because she runs into this stuff as well. But let's focus on one thing first, and then yes, that will be one of them. Either her or Adams, but honestly with this, it looks like it could be her. So I'm going to go off of that. So, Britt, any final words about the Eisners?
Well, honestly, I think that it's good that Thompson won, but they definitely need to revamp a little bit and, um, you know, choose um, books and writers, artists and everything that actually deserve to be nominated than
Mhm.
being a popularity contest. I know another book actually from last year was Superman Lost, and it was kind of like, okay, first of all, that book totally like sales talk and everything was not good. So how was even that nominated for anything? So yeah, they definitely need to revamp the quality ranking or something for what is chosen to be nominated. And yeah, Tom King definitely he does not deserve to win anything, especially with his egomaniac type, you know, thought process of thinking that he is an encyclopedia of DC when no, he knows nothing of these characters.
Yeah. Oh, trust me. The minute that James Gunn's wife called him an encyclopedia of DC, I go, well, that's concerning.
Right. I mean, you can say Mark, even though Mark Wade has his problems, Mark Wade is still like the best candidate and should have been the one chosen instead of Tom King. Gunn choosing Tom King is definitely I mean, what we
Well,
got
because
with,
remember, I mean, they were doing a Jim Lee and Friends panel, and then James Gunn showed up and basically talked about, and again, Tom King is on that panel, talked about how much Supergirl meant to him.
um, I mean, was there anything else said? It doesn't even seem like it.
I don't know, but it's like, okay, so drunk Supergirl, nice. That's why it's, again, he just confirmed more. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow is a move in the DCU just because of that. If Absolute Universe continues to be successful and popular, you think it's part of the Prime Universe? No, they're not going to. Don't make it part of the Prime Universe. Keep it separate. That's the key thing. Now, what this will do, this I've said for the past year with this series, that if this continues to be successful, which all indicators that it is, this is going to force DC to rethink how they handle Wonder Woman, because hell, your Wonder Woman series just won a freaking Eisner. The one that is decidedly unlike regular Wonder Woman, and the one that's supposed to be your main Wonder Woman, your backbone Wonder Woman, didn't win. That should tell you that it's not about the character, but it's about how you handle said character.
Right, right.
So that's the key thing here. So now let's talk about Fantastic Four, and we will be getting into spoilers. So any of you guys that don't want to talk about spoilers, go ahead and leave now. But it's great having you guys on, and we'll see you guys later. So Fantastic Four. So let me tell you this, Britt. This is what Marvel really needed, because first off, I liked how this was separate from the MCU. It's on its own Earth 828, which I liked at the end when they show that 828 was Jack Kirby's birthday, because again, Jack Kirby co-created the Fantastic Four.
Right.
So I liked all the homages to that, because he got royally screwed in terms of credit for creating stuff.
Mhm.
And I really enjoyed all the family dynamic of this movie, and there was like tons of like really awesome action. I liked the Silver Surfer as a character. But yeah, so Britt, what did you think of the movie?
Okay, so yeah, I did give this a 9 out of 10
I agree.
because you feel the heart of it, which is Sue. And it gave that, as we've been talking about through this whole stream, is the matriarch perspective. And that is pretty much what we need more of. With this industry of comic books and everything, and superheroes being a boys' club, you have female fans, you know, and there is a story to tell from the female perspective. And it's not putting her in that traditional state again as just the mother and the wife. She is still a her own hero. And to see how Sue means, to the group, that she is basically the glue that holds everyone together. And the powerful sentiment of her becoming a mother, with Franklin, and how protective they were of her, how you see the emotional stakes that it really took, with her having a child. And then how the world, or New York was integrated within them, and the civilians actually had a role too of you felt that they were actually heroes of New York, you know, of that old town. I mean, old time of the 60s. And I love the fact that it was, yeah, it was the 60s, but it was also very futuristic at the same time. They really knew how to blend that in, and it wasn't an exaggeration of the characters either. Comparing it to Superman, you had that one scene of Clark Kent, and he was being, of course, the usual. He had to be the not so much as a galoot, but at the same time, he was a little dorky and everything. And it was more so like with the Superman movie, it was a checkbox of everything. It's like, okay, we have a Clark Kent scene where he's acting a little, like the um, doofus that might uh, hit a door or something.
Mhm.
You have the Lois and Clark relationship. You have him saving, well, a squirrel, but you having him do tedious things. Um, he does a big fight, and then the world turns on him for a little bit. It's not resolved, but you basically have to fill in the blanks yourself, and we get to the happy ending. That's it, that's all. With Fantastic Four, you actually go through the journey with the characters. You actually have the arc of what makes these characters and who they are. You're far more invested with them than you are with the Superman characters, because not Tom King, well, Tom King, yeah, but James Gunn wanted you to have this already lived in world. But the way DC is so fecal, and people aren't very much aware of the DC world like that, they know the characters, but as symbols again, but they don't know their actual personalities and everything. So for your expectation to just go in with stuff already established off screen and just feel like the audience to accept that, after a while you do see the cracks within that, and that's something that, no, that's very much a cheat. But it felt like what DC fans wanted were, they wanted that happy-go-lucky type thing that's different from Snyder. And it makes it seem like the praise of this new Superman movie comes from, it's just not Snyder, you know.
Mhm.
With the Fantastic Four, however, it felt like it was more of a genuine victory lap, because again, they've had three times, they've tried three times prior, and all of them has failed, except for the early 2000s, you know, um, Fantastic Four movies with Chris Evans as Johnny. Those are kind of like a classic type thing, for that time of the early 2000s.
I
But
saw
it's
all those in
still,
theaters. Oh man, do I feel old right now.
and those, they work for what they are, early 2000s. But the ones in between, terrible, and just really lost its way for the Fantastic Four. So this was definitely a win, because not only are you being genuine to the characters and who they are, but you're going back to their roots in a way. and you are integrating them in a natural sense to the rest of the Marvel universe, which is, you know, basically, pun intended, fantastic. Um, and with Franklin and his introduction, you know, again, you have Sue as the mother to be, as the wife and everything, but she still had her moments to truly shine. And she was the heart and soul of this movie. And again, to compare it to Superman, with the whole telling and not showing thing. That was another thing that Superman had a problem with. You know, you have fans saying that Lois was the heart and soul of this movie, of the Superman movie. No, she wasn't, because she was, her role really wasn't as significant, you know. She
Hmm.
played the love interest, but the I would say the emotional part really came from like Jonathan Kent, you know, giving Clark that pep talk, or just everyone else around. But their relationship just wasn't solidified like Reed and Sue's work was in this movie. And she's the one that really demanded the spotlight, and she got it. You know, that climactic uh, scene where she was going to get her baby back from Galacticus and, you know, push him into the portal and everything like that, and she was going to sacrifice her life for her baby. That was a pivotal moment as a mother and as a superhero, you know, to combine that like that. You don't have anything like that with Lois, you know. So that again, the way that a female character was presented was vastly better.
Well, yeah, and the other thing, speaking of presenting vastly better and Galactus, because my biggest problem, yes, the original Fantastic Four movies are pretty good, but they're forever tainted by the fact that they didn't think that Galactus being a like big guy in a suit would actually translate well. So you know what they did, Britt? Do you know what they did?
They had him in a
He was a space cloud.
cloud.
He was literally a space cloud. There wasn't like that was just like the effect of like the environment around him. No, he was literally just a space cloud.
So you
So
mean like the poofy
yeah,
white thing?
no, it was like a black space cloud, but it was still just a cloud.
Wow, that is wow.
Because they didn't think that like the audience would that the audience would buy a giant guy in a purple suit. This movie sure totally wrong. The first time you see Galactus, they're like looking up at him. You just see his eyes, and then he just like and then you see like the true scale of him, and I go, that is 100% Galactus. And then you have the Silver Surfer, which a version of the Silver Surfer is a woman. So I'm like, okay, that works. I also like this is the first time where we saw like a person become the Silver Surfer, because we hadn't seen that in like the first movie. I don't think it's like where she makes the deal with Galactus to be like a herald because it would spare her planet. That's straight from the comics. All versions of the Heralds of Galactus have done that. And you see like she steps onto the board, and then like her clothes recede, and then she becomes like this. And then it's like the other thing that I like about this movie, as opposed to like the originals, is in the originals they kind of portrayed Johnny Storm as like a meathead. In this, he still was like that comedy center of the group. However, he was able to like decipher her language and like talk to her, and eventually turn her against Galactus.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
the other thing, speaking of Soul Surfer, the one ding I give this movie is like when they're trying to knock Galactus back into the portal, she just comes out of nowhere and just knocks him in.
Yes,
It would
that
be one thing if she fought alongside them before and then like made the sacrifice play, but the fact that it just comes out of nowhere, I'm like, okay.
right. That again, the emotional parts really hit. You know, it just really shows how You know, again, the difference between when Marvel has their eye basically on the prize, they hit it right. DC, sometimes they're too ambitious and still miss the target, or again, it's a lot of telling and not showing. And also, it's with the telling part, is that you have to accept it and it becomes overhyped and everything like that. Um, and
Or
it's
it's
also,
like, or it's like, don't question the movie's logic. And I go, no, I'm gonna question the movie's logic. Well,
right?
remember the last time we had all that stuff was, guess what? The Snyderverse.
Yeah, if you don't question it, later on is going to be a lot of contradictions, or something isn't going to do right. And again, this is also, Gunn's whole thing, period. Everything that he announced or, for chapter one so far or so, he basically in these, recent interviews, it was kind of like, yeah, not everything is going as planned. Well, duh, Sherlock, is not, because your priorities weren't on what was actually supposed to be prioritized. Now you're basically pressured to have Wonder Woman prioritized. She should have been, if not the first, she should have been the second after Superman. Like, no brainer. Batman already has the Batman from Reeves, so you don't really have to rush with Brave and the Bold. But Wonder Woman should have had a movie or something already written, you know, um, accepted or whatever, and greenlit from jump when Superman was being written. Um, and the fact that, like I said, it had to be pressured in order to get a Wonder Woman movie says a lot of Gunn's mindset, and how, if you see the structure of the Superman movie, this is basically how it's going to feel with the rest of the DCU. And honestly, as a fan, you do think a little bit ahead and wonder, is this, you know, the tone that you want for these characters? Do you want the gun tone for the characters? That,
Nope. The answer is no.
yeah, that's the kind of question you want to ask. And the fact that Marvel really just hit the right note for Fantastic Four, it wasn't too campy, it wasn't too serious. It was just a it this was actually the it felt like you were reading or watching a comic book come to life.
Oh yeah,
Superman,
that they also really weighed in on, like, lean Wayne's that, because actually, Brett, I don't know if you noticed this. When they're fighting during the montage and they're battling that monster out of the ground, that's legit recreating the first cover of Fantastic Four.
right, right,
This one right here.
exactly, exactly.
And I'm like,
So,
that's an homage there. And it's like, yeah, Superman had that, but this one I felt did it better
better,
in that it wasn't like, because with Superman, some part of it felt like my whole nostalgia armor thing about, like, they know the script is weak or something like that, so like throw all this references in there to trick people into thinking.
exactly.
And also, there wasn't anything egregious in this movie, like the whole stupid, oh, the cosmic rays were sent by Doom to kill them. No, I'm referencing the egregious, like, Kryptonians thing.
Exactly, exactly. I keep wanting to say Tom King because they are very much interchangeable and act in the same way. But James Gunn, he definitely was relying on, this is in the comics that I'm doing Silver Age wackiness, having crypto and all of that. That is exactly what he was going for, and it worked at some points, but again, he undercut even, some of the moments that were supposed to be emotional, he still undercut it, with jokes. They had to take out a lot of jokes with that. I would say even with this movie, this I believe it was said that it was supposed to be like 3 hours, and they cut a lot out to keep it under that 2 hour time frame, which is
Hmm.
kind of stupid. But I believe the director said that there's no extended cut, or they're not going to release that, which is sad. But I mean,
Because
at
it's
least
like
do some.
there's so much VFX in that it would be cost prohibitive to do that.
Right. So, I mean, but this movie still, as I said, was very much structured, so much better than Superman. And again, it felt genuine as a comic book, iteration that's being adapted or whatever. But with Gunn, it was very try hard. And after a while, I think a lot of fans will see that. Um, and with going forward with the DCU, we would see the cracks of that structure as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
as I
And
said,
I
I
do
give
think this movie's gonna age way
way
better than
better.
Superman.
Exactly, exactly.
I,
So
I I also I really like the fusion of like the '60s era, like with it felt like because the advantage of this being in a modern, in a like, yeah, and by the way, Dave says most online reviewers are liking this more than Superman. The thing about this, the advantage that this movie has, being an Elseworld essentially, is that you can do the whole this world is perpetually in the '60s, but it essentially makes sense. And the other thing is, like I was telling this when Robert and I were talking about this movie today, the the thing about this, because my biggest problem with like 1984, in addition to like a lot of other stuff, is why doesn't anyone in like the modern day reference the world going to hell? But in this, because it's an Elseworld, you don't have to worry about why didn't Tony Stark talk about when Galactus showed up.
exactly, exactly. And that was the thing, that 1984 was definitely a try hard of fill in the blanks, and absolutely bombed.
Well, yeah, exactly. But and by the way, Britt, did you know that the post credit cameo at the end with Doom, that was actually Robert Downey Jr. in the suit. It wasn't like a stand-in.
Oh, so he just didn't turn around.
Yeah, he
Okay,
just did not turn around. That's obviously setting up Doomsday. But yeah,
right,
so that's
right.
that. And if you notice, it's like when Sue is talking at the UN, very Diana-like, I must say.
Exactly.
They pan across all the different nations, and then Latveria is there.
Yes, that again, that is why it really, um, that is, I mean, our comparison right there of why these two pairings can come together, or at least have a crossover with Wonder Woman and Sue. That would have been better. Again, I would say better than Captain America and Diana.
Yeah, it's one of those like this is definitely the first Marvel movie in a while. This is in my top 5 MCU movies. Like this is in there because this, and there were so many, because I was concerned going into this, because you heard the plot leaks about Sue basically dominating the movie, and like this her and because the way the plot leaks portrayed it is that it was just going to be Sue and the Silver Surfer, girl boss, and Galactus. Now, I can tell you, doesn't happen. There were so many opportunities where I'm like, oh, here we go, and they didn't do it. Reed is very much the leader of the team. Sue is the heart, but in other words, he's still like giving orders, like Johnny, do that, Ben, do this. So
Strategist.
yeah, yeah, exactly. He's the strategist, and it's like when I said earlier about Sue being the co-lead of the Fantastic Four book. That's what this very much felt like, and that's why I was like, okay, I get it now. This is really cool, and I really, really, really appreciate it. And Britt, the visuals in this movie, like when they go into like into light speed, essentially, what. It looked amazing. This movie also looked amazing.
Right. As I said earlier, very different from Superman. The CGI with Superman was really wonky at certain points. I mean, and you can tell this one was a lot more smoother.
Yeah, exactly. And then we get to again, like you said before, the genuine engagement, because not only did this movie open up to a better Thursday previews than Superman, haha, rip, but this also was like is like getting more consistent positive buzz, and and again you're seeing a little bit more of genuineness. Now, will this be able to make more than Superman? We'll see. I think
Right.
it can. The potential is there. If it does, that would be hilarious. But the fact again that the Fantastic Four, this is the movie I was concerned about, Britt, because here's the thing. Last time the Fantastic Four had a movie was in 2015, and it's one of the worst movies ever. Like
I
at
think
one
it got a
point,
9 on
huh?
Rotten. It got I
Yeah.
believe that movie got a 9 on the Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, we call it Fan Four Stick, but it's one of the worst comic book movies of all time. At one point, you and I have to watch it and I'll riff on it, but it is horrendous. So that was the first thing, and then the only two at best okay, at worst bad Fantastic Four movies were in the early 2000s. I still like them, but by the way, I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying how the general audience portrays them. So I was very concerned with, okay, is this going to do well? Literally, this is doing way better than I thought it was so far. It's like the movie was, again, now I've enjoyed Thunderbolts. I liked Cap 4. This is the best Marvel movie of the year. I'm saying it right there.
Right, right.
Like
Uh,
the best.
mhm.
So
I mean, it really
yeah,
does
go ahead.
do its job. It really does do its job where you want Avengers Doomsday to be good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah. That better be good. It's with the Russo brothers. So I'm like, the last two Avengers movies they did were freaking fantastic. So I'm like, okay, there you go. There you go.
Right.
That's why I'm like, this could be good. But yeah, so that's Reed and Sue. So Britt, what do you think of Reed and Sue?
Honestly, they are the epitome of the first family and the first power couple. I mean, yes, we love Superman and Wonder Woman, but they are essentially the first, though. And with reading their history and watching this movie and everything, I root for them.
Yeah, exactly. I love that too. Yeah, me too. And the movie made me want to go add Fantastic Four to my pull list. So more updates on that. And but yeah, so I think that is a good place to leave it. So Britt, do you have any stories you want to tease us with?
Right. So I am still writing Awakens, the last chapter and the epilogue. It's going to be very fun and funny to upload that when I can. We have chapter 3 of Odyssey, which we've talked about, and of course, I have other ideas later on. And then Shelterverse chapter 4, and I have a couple of more one shots that I will be uploading during the week. Um, you know, when I have time to, but I do have a couple of one shots that I do want to, like I said, get uploaded during this week, which are very, very, I would say very sweet. I would say something very sweet, and also a one shot that was inspired by Mark Waid's World's Finest 30. A little bit of an extension from that.
Exactly. I cannot wait. But stay heroic, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lane. She belongs with General Zod or the T-Rex from Jurassic Park, and she definitely would make a crappy Heralds of Galactus. Zois the Maxibat for life. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.